Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this remote meeting of the Lewis District Council Planning Applications Committee on the 10th of March 2021. I am Councillor Davey, Chair of this committee. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the recently published government regulations. For those participating in the meeting or watching on the live stream, please bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. I will now take agenda items 1, 2 and 3 together, introductions, attendance and substitutes, and declarations of interest. And I now ask my fellow committee members to introduce themselves to listeners via a roll call. This is to be done in alphabetical order, and I will ask that each confirms their name, if they are acting as a substitute, and whether they wish to make a declaration of interest in any item on the agenda and the nature of that interest. Before I do so, I confirm we have had no apologies as yet. Also, I have no interest to declare on any of the items on this agenda. The roll call. Councillor Graham Amy, please.
Councillor Graham Amy, no interest to declare on items on the agenda, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Amy. Councillor Linda Duhigg, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Linda Duhigg. I have no declarations of interest on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't believe Councillor Tom Jones is with us yet. Councillor Sylvia Lord, please.
Councillor Sylvia Lord. I have no declaration of interest to declare on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Councillor Millie Manley, please.
Councillor Millie Manley. I have no declarations of interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Imogen Makepeace, please.
Councillor Imogen Makepeace. I have no declarations of interest on the agenda this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Makepeace. Councillor Lawrence O'Connor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lawrence O'Connor. I have nothing to declare in respect of the agenda items this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Nicola Papanikolaou.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Nicola Papanikolaou. I have no items on the agenda to declare. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Papanikolaou. Councillor Steve Saunders, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Councillor Steve Saunders. No interest to declare on any of the items on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor Christoph von Kerthy, please.
Councillor Christoph von Kerthy, no interest to declare on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor von Kerthy. Also joining us are officers Mr. Andrew Hill, Senior Planning Advisor, and Mrs. Joanne Stone, Solicitor, who are in attendance to present reports and respond to any questions from members. Democratic Services Officer, Mrs. Jennifer Norman, is also in attendance, and other Democratic Services officers are assisting in the background on this meeting. Please can I ask all participants ensure their microphones have been muted when not speaking. If you have any connection issues, you may find it will help if you turn off your camera when not speaking. Agenda item 4, minutes. Councillors, do you wish me to sign the minutes of the last meeting on 17th February 2021 as a correct record? I will take it that all are in agreement unless someone speaks now to disagree. Thank you very much, councillors. The minutes have been approved. Agenda item 5, urgent items. There are no items to be considered as a matter of urgency. There is an officer's update, which is a supplementary report, which has been sent out to members on email. Please can any members indicate now if they have not received it? Thank you. Agenda item 6, petitions. There are no petitions. Agenda item 7, written questions. There are no written questions from members pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 12.3. Now, to ensure that all parties are clear as to the Council's constitution, the committee is not in a position to accept any new additional documentation sent to us electronically today. Although previously submitted documents will be referred to as part of the officer's presentation where appropriate. We now come to the planning applications. For those unfamiliar with the procedure of planning applications, first there is a presentation by planning officers. Then we would normally hear public speakers. However, live public speaking has temporarily been suspended during remote meetings. Instead, public speakers have been invited to send in speeches which will be read out by an officer. Any received will be heard in this order. A representation from town or parish council, maximum of 5 minutes. Up to 3 speeches from objectors, a maximum of 3 minutes each. Up to 3 speeches from supporters, a maximum of 3 minutes each. A speech from a ward member, a maximum of 5 minutes. Members are then invited to discuss the application and put forward a recommendation. I will ask members to raise their hands electronically if they wish to speak. To vote, I will call the name of each committee member present in alphabetical order. Please clearly state whether you are for, against, or are abstaining from voting, or if you have missed part of the debate and are unable to vote. It is essential that members are present for the entire presentation and discussion of the application to be able to vote on that item. If a member very briefly loses their internet connection, this may not disqualify them from voting on the item, provided they seek clarification as to anything they may have missed as soon as possible after they have reconnected. Can all councillors, officers and participants please clearly state their name each time they speak so that it is clear to members of the public listening who is speaking? And now can I please move to planning applications not within the South Downs National Park, and the first being application number LW/20/0659, location, land to the rear of 6 to 12 Tarring Close, South Heighton, East Sussex, proposal, demolition of existing double garage and erection of 1 2-bedroom dwelling with associated landscaping, off-road parking and cycle parking, ward, Ouse Valley and Ringler. Applicant, Mr. Penalia. Recommendation, approved subject to conditions. Mr. Hill, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sharing my screen. First item on the agenda, land to the rear of 6 to 12 Tarring Close. This is an application for the erection of a 2-storey flat-roofed single-storey dwelling with 2 bedrooms. This is the location of the site. It's a backland site located between number 8 and 12 Tarring Close. Access via a footpath which runs from Heighton Crescent to the rear, and also the roadway which provides access to the rear garages. This is just an aerial photo of the site showing you the Tarring Close, the main access, vehicle access to the site down Westview Terrace, and the footpath link which runs through from Heighton Crescent, providing access to the back. The site itself is this slither of land here with the old lorry truck bed on it, this transit van here, and it wraps around the garages and this small area of green space to the rear of the garages. This is a pair of garages. There's access to parking at the rear here for the properties in Tarring Close. Just a bit more detail on that. This is the red line to show the site area and the layout of the site. And again, that access in from Westview Terrace, and also with the 2 car parking spaces behind for number 2 Tarring Close. Going into the layout plan, this is the ground floor, and the thing to to note here is that it's you have the bedrooms on the ground floor, 2-bedded units, garden, small garden at the side and to the rear of the properties in Tarring Close, with a bin and bike store and a single parking space along the northern boundary on its western end. Notice from the plans that there's very limited openings in the ground floor itself. 2 bedrooms, whilst there is an oriel window, are served largely by a light well, and I'll give you some more explanation on these 2 light wells in a minute. The thing to point out here is that the northern elevation of the building sits hard up against the rears of rear fence line of number 8 and number 6 Tarring Close, and we've got some photos, so I think that's just a point just to bear in mind when we come on to the remainder of the plans and the photographs themselves. The upper floor is a single open space area providing living, study and kitchen area. And again, there is a small balcony facing east, which is accessed through the study. There's an area here, you can see the 2 grey slits. These are the light wells providing light to the bedrooms beneath. This area here, which has a balcony, some glazed balcony screening here, is to be not used as a balcony itself. It's supposed to be for access only for maintenance. There are a pair of French doors here, and this will become evident from the elevations, but those are guarded by a Juliet balcony which runs across the front. And the importance of that will become evident when you see the site photos in a minute. This area is the light well is accessible, but again, there is a fairly high boundary wall here, which exceeds to approximately 2 metres above that finished floor level, so preventing visibility directly into the rear gardens. And elevations of the building, this is the west elevation, so as you come down the terrace and you turn into the site, this is the end elevation with the car parking space, the garden behind the close boarded fence, and the side elevation, using a combination on the elevations of render in white and grey. This is the north elevation, so this is the elevation facing onto the rear gardens at number 8 and number 6. And again, you can just see the top of the door frame here, so just to indicate that there's no ability to look into number 8 and number 6 directly from that. But this elevation will be hard up against the rear boundary of those 2 properties. This is the east elevation. So this is the elevation behind the garage block that I showed you earlier. So there's 2 car parking spaces down here for other residents. And again, this is that sort of glazed screen and the large French doors, which have, as I said, a Juliet balcony in the front of those. And again, the south elevation, which is the elevation to the main car parking area for the adjacent properties. These will put a little bit more illustration onto the plans themselves, giving you this 2-dimensional effect. So from the car parking area, looking back towards it, you can see the very contemporary blocky form of the building. This is just taking you up a little bit to show you the flat roof, which is not accessible at all. That's to be a sedum roof with PV panels. And you can see the small balcony area here with its screening wall to prevent any overlooking to the north into the adjacent gardens. And again, from above, and these are the gardens for number 8 and number 6. As I said before, it's built hard up on that rear boundary, so you have in effect a 2-storey rendered wall at the end of your garden. But again, the height of that wall is such that it doesn't allow any direct overlooking from the French doors, which are located on this elevation and look largely to the east, as in this bottom illustration here, and you can make out the Juliet balcony, which is fixed in front of those 2 French doors. And again, the recessed small terrace here, which is totally enclosed and doesn't allow movement from that into the larger area here, which again, is indicated on the plans just as a maintenance area. And again, the small decked area balcony at the frontage looking east, again, safeguarding with views to the north by the boundary treatment here. I'm just taking you through the site and some site photographs. This is the entrance to the garage area. So you come from Tarring Close and you drive into the rear garages. This is the rear of block of garages, and the site itself is just round the corner. So as you travel down here and go round the corner, you come to the site itself. So it's this pair of garages that will be replaced with the dwelling, and this is the amenity and car parking area that would be linked to that dwelling. So the dwelling would sit pretty much on the footprint here, but extend to the boundaries of the adjacent properties. Again, just standing in front of those garages, and there'll be a small projection out to the front here, tying it back to roughly the boundary with this property here at number 8, and that would tie across, and the building itself would sit hard up on that, but at 2-storey height. From number 8, Tarring Close, this is looking south, and again, the extent of the building, you can make out the lorry container there, and the building itself, where the garages are, would extend from the corner of number 6 here, across the frontage to pretty much the corner of number 8 here, and would rise 2 stories up, and would be a white rendered wall to prevent any overlooking from the proposed new dwelling. And again, from that same window, and it gives you an idea of the outlook and the proximity of the adjacent properties. And again, looking slightly to the southwest from that rear window, looking over the truck bed here, and again, swinging round on the next photo, looking slightly to the southeast, so that you can make out the garages here, which would be replaced with a new dwelling, and that dwelling would sit in this space here at a 2-storey height, but with flat roof. And again, from the ground floor of number 8, looking across the rear garden, and again, the building itself would rise from this corner of the garden here and across the field of view to the adjacent corner of the adjacent property at number 6. I'll just leave that up. So that's the proposal. There's just a couple of points I'd like to bring to Councillor's attention. Firstly, in terms of the supplemental report, which members have all received. I'll just stop sharing. The supplemental report, yes, Southampton Parish Council have, notwithstanding their previous comments on the amended plans, they have raised an objection to the scheme in terms of overdevelopment of the site and deem it not to be in keeping with the street scene or the neighbouring properties. And in terms of the report itself, there's just one minor alteration, and that's on page 18, and it's condition 3, that much as it would be desirable to require them to provide an electric vehicle, it should read that the dwelling hereby permitted an electric vehicle charging point. That just wasn't copied through on the printing of the report, but it is in the draft decision notice. So we are recommending approval as set out in the report, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hill. I'll now call on Mrs. Jennifer Norman to read out the public speeches, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Hill for his presentation. We have received 5 written representations in respect of this application, and I will begin with the first one, and it is from Karen Petit, who is a neighbor to the location. And this is an objection to the application. With regards to the issues with Westview Terrace, there is an access driveway for emergency services and binmen as per the land registry, which hasn't changed, and the electoral roll register. This is also shown on the road signs in Tarring Close and the road signs on Avis Roads, as well as his own buildings. The underhand way of the owner, agent, and council have gone about this in a height of a pandemic is ludicrous. The building itself, not only does it take away light from our gardens, which comes under the Prescription Act of 1832, there is also the Privacy Act. Child protection comes into this, as the upstairs will be so close that it will be looking into children's bedrooms and bathrooms as well as the gardens. I do not need to tell you of the Party Wall Act of 1996, health and safety, surely. Now, noise, dust, builders, parking, deliveries of building materials, and the digging of services and foundations, the concrete driveway being dug up or being blocked in or out, the turning circles of lorries, the time of day and building the lack of space to build between the fence and wall. Need I go on with these common sense issues? Also, the lack of toilet for builders. So the issues that the neighbors have objected to are parking, mass overdevelopment, access in a car park, light, privacy, blocking access, noise, dust, too close to the boundary, out of character, slither of land, child protection, emergency access, increased strain on infrastructure, drainage. Now, ironically, the neutral tones were lack of privacy and parking. The ones that were for the idea either said it was a great idea or to improve the area, as fly tipping is very bad. Now there is no fly tipping. The rubbish is next to the garage and the box fan all belong to the owner of the garages. So really, when looking at all the comments, not one is in complete agreement. Now, since the parish council have objected, their first one was neutral, apparently, as the residents did not contact them due to not knowing that's what they had to do, and a pandemic, of course. James and his boss have said as long as the balcony is gone, they are okay with it. I'm not sure why the balcony would make such a difference that they still have large windows or a Juliet balcony and will still be overlooking. The emergency services have been contacted, although I did not reply, as I totally understand there is a pandemic going on and they have more pressing problems. But interestingly, the fire brigade did come back to me stating that they have issues with the upstairs kitchen. For example, the emergency exit and also the access road is tight to get down and is now for the Edwardian houses and flats. All of this can be backed up by photos the case officer took from his site visit, the amount of cars parked and a bin lorry maneuvering whilst he was here, the land registry and electoral roll as well. That concludes the first representation, and we'll move on to the second. And this is an objection to the application, and it is on behalf of John Brookbanks. He is a neighbor and the owner of 10 Tarring Close. Excuse me. The development of this tiny plot is considered to have caused a negative reaction far greater than the benefit to the developer of the community. These objections have been placed by residents who feel they will be adversely affected by this addition to their already overdeveloped area with narrow roads, insufficient visitor parking, and lack of space for the transit of the ever-increasing number of internet delivery vans that are now essential in this new COVID world. We objectors are not versed to the intricacies of the planning rules or district development plans. We just know that this proposal feels like it will affect our lives detrimentally, as did the committee that refused the original planning application in 2001/2002, and congestion issues are now worse. The district development plan encourages development of underutilized areas, but this does not necessarily mean it justifies this application. If the developer thinks it is necessary to return a small profit by developing the site to the detriment of nearly all of his neighbors, it is disturbing to say the least. I believe he could probably achieve a similar or even greater return just by tidying up the area and selling the double garage and land as it stands. The amendment of the plans to extend to the boundary of adjacent properties is significant as it implies that the proposal is indeed too small and is struggling for viability. Any problems encountered with utility position or connections could soon see the project into difficulty, or even worse, the project could run out of funds and never get completed. The north elevation of overbearing monolithic slabs is more than twice the height of any garage, and I would agree that garage blocks have no redeeming architectural features, and neither does this design. I do not agree with the agent's view that the impact on number 6 to 8 Tarring Close are minimal and its 15 to 17 meter distance from the houses. In most developments, houses are usually separated by twice that amount. The mean azimuth of the sun for this area is 30 degrees. This monolith with a height of 6 meters would then shade the gardens by an average of 10.4 meters. The reduction in direct sunlight would be even more oppressive in the winter. Being the only upside-down house in the area and with the balcony privacy walls creating an echo chamber effect, the increased noise transference to neighboring bedrooms and gardens via dominant southerly winds would be unacceptable. The agent refers to the development as a 2-person, 1-car dwelling, when in fact it could be a cramped 3 to 4-person dwelling with a possibility of a further 3 cars requiring parking somewhere else. A site visit by committee is imperative. The South Heighton Parish Council, after a representative having visited the site, have now changed their view from neutral to object. Yours sincerely, John Brookbanks, owner of 10 Tarring Close. And we will now move on to the third of 5 representations, and this is in support of the application, and this is received on behalf of Jennifer Foreman, the agent. Excuse me. Dear councillors, the application before you is cited within an established residential area in the built-up area boundary where new development is supported in principle. The proposal relates to a brownfield site and makes a creative and more efficient use of land which is currently of little value. Paragraph 118D of the NPPF specifically states that planning policies and decisions should promote and support the development of underutilized land and buildings, especially if this would help to meet the identified needs for housing where land supply is constrained and available sites could be used more effectively. It goes on to list a number of examples of such sites, which include garage lockups. Therefore, the principle of development is not only locally supported, but also at the national level. The development is fully contained within the garage and land owned by the applicants and makes use of an existing right of access. It will therefore not impact on the operation and access of the surrounding car parking court. Furthermore, the garages have almost solely been used for the general domestic storage for the last 16 years by the applicants, as they have ample parking at the rear of their property. And so, in effect, there will be a net increase of 1 car parking space on the application site. This is sufficient for a 2-bedroom dwelling, and the proposed cycle store will also encourage cycling as an alternative mode of transport. As confirmed by the officer, there would not be an unacceptable impact on highway safety, nor would the residential cumulative impact on the road network be severe for the scheme to be prevented on highway grounds. To ensure there will be no adverse harm on the neighborhood dwellings in terms of overlooking and loss of privacy, the dwelling features a balcony wall along the northeastern elevation. This will prevent any direct and adverse level of overlooking on numbers 2 to 12 Tarring Close. Furthermore, the scheme has been amended so that the original proposed eastern balcony is now a Juliet balcony with no access onto the flat roof. The officer has conditioned this to ensure that that remains the case. Removing access to this flat roof will further ensure there is no adverse level of overlooking to the rear gardens to the north, as well as the gardens of Seaford Close. In addition to utilizing a brownfield site, the scheme includes a number of sustainable features such as solar panels to provide renewable energy, a soakway to collect and store rainwater runoff, the biodiversity improvements through the incorporation of 2 grass roofs and proposed planting in the garden. The scheme is an attractive contemporary design which will improve the appearance of the immediate area whilst also providing some increased natural surveillance over the car parking court. As confirmed by your officers, the scheme is in accordance with all the development plan policies and is supported by the NPPF. We therefore respectfully ask that you also support the application. We'll now move on to the fourth of the 5 written representations, and this is in support of the application. A statement to be read on behalf of the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Penaluna. Dear councillors, the application before you proposes a high-quality home for 2 to 3 people in a sustainable location with good access to local amenities and services. As confirmed by your officer, suitable land for housing is very limited in the South Heighton area, and as such, this underutilized brownfield site offers a sustainable option which would help contribute to the supply of new homes in the area. Whilst the proposed footprint is only marginally larger than the existing, the proposed dwelling exceeds the minimum space standards and provides a good level of outdoor amenity space. The overall footprint and plot size is similar to that of the surrounding dwellings, and the overall proposed building height being slightly lower. Therefore, in the context of the surrounding area, it would not appear overdeveloped. Rather than simply mimicking the lackluster appearance of the surrounding architecture, we wanted to provide a more contemporary design to reflect the regenerative nature of the scheme. Furthermore, the site is somewhat self-contained. It is only visible within its immediate surroundings and therefore merits a character of its own, as confirmed by the officer. Being in a cul-de-sac, the road is quiet with little traffic. Parking is not a problem in the immediate area, as all but one of the 16 dwellings that use the access road have private off-road parking on their own property. Additionally, there is a supplementary parking for up to 6 extra vehicles in the parking court. And nevertheless, the scheme includes 1 parking space, which is sufficient for the proposal. The neighborhood is generally neat and tidy, unlike the application site, which includes a scruffy and underutilized piece of land to which fly tipping has been a constant and ongoing problem for us. At night, the area is currently unlit with limited natural surveillance, and so the presence of a new modest dwelling would also improve the security of the area and bring a feeling of well-being to the location. We would also like it to be known that the northern boundary of the application site and the back gardens of Tarring Close used to be separated by a 1.7 meter wide footpath. These neighbors extended their boundaries over the footpath without consent in the early 2000s, resulting in their plots being much closer to ours than they should be. It is noted that a councillor from South Heighton Parish Council is looking into the possibility of getting this footpath reinstated. We believe that the innovative and stylish development would not only make much better use of the land by providing a much needed high quality home, but in doing so will also enhance, uplift, and benefit the area and community in many ways. It will provide a much more friendly corridor that currently exists between Seaford and Tarring Close. The design includes sustainable measures, and the construction will endeavor to be as ecologically friendly as possible. We hope you agree with your officers and support the application before you. And I'll now move on to the final representation in respect of this application. And this is a statement to be read on behalf of Councillor Sean McLeod in his capacity as the Lewis District Ward Councillor. Thank you for taking the time to read my objection to this application. I do not speak as someone that is offended by the design of the building. I actually think it's nice, modern, and is environmentally friendly, but you also have to argue that it's hugely out of keeping for the area. My objection mainly is to do with the location. I actually find it a bit odd that such a beautiful, well-designed building hidden away in what is effectively a car park, and that is what it is a single access track for cars into what is a car park. I think the committee also has to take into consideration that the owners of the properties along Westview Terrace have to use the garage area as their car parking, as the front of their properties has no road or footpath in many places. If you look at Google Maps, the shot currently shows 5 cars in and around this development site, and the committee has to recognize that these cars are going to have to park somewhere. If not here or around here, where do the officers recommend they go? I don't feel the photos included in this application actually do it justice. This site has already been refused twice to overdevelopment, so I am shocked the officers are recommending it for approval, as it really is not an ideal location. I have been a district councillor for Lewis District Council for 2 years now, and I haven't had a single report. Now in other areas of South Heighton, there is a problem with fly tipping, but I am not aware of this being an area of regular fly tips. And given that I live locally and do a weekly walk around, I would be aware of a regular fly tipping problem. So personally, I feel that this should not be a reason that this application is being given approval. I have spoken with officers and asked for over the last 5 years how many reports of fly tipping there has been, and there has only been one. This area is used as a regular access to school children accessing Avis Road, and so there's a safety concern for young people, especially when the site is being developed. I also have significant concerns as the close proximity to the back gardens of Tarring Close, the sheer overshadowing from the property into the back gardens. It will be quite staggering. Not only that, the owners of the properties will effectively be looking out to a white concrete brick wall, and I just struggle to think how anyone could think this is acceptable. The other garages here also experience flooding, and whatever SUDS might say, as I can't find anything within the documents that they have been consulted. So the garages do experience flooding already, and some of the owners of the properties on Westview Terrace have invested significant money in protecting their garages from flooding. So rightly, a number of them have raised significant concerns at the possible effects this overdevelopment will have on flooding. As I say, the development isn't ugly. I actually quite like it. The problem for me is pure and simple the location and the overdevelopment, and that is why, sadly, I hope that the committee will reject this application. Thank you for your time, Councillor Sean McLeod, Ouse Valley and Ringmer Ward. And that concludes the representations received in respect of this application, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Norman. We're now going to go over to the councillors for their comments and questions, please. And the first hand I see here is Councillor O'Connor, please. Thank you. And then I see Councillor Saunders. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you to Mrs. Norman for reading all of that out. Very grateful. Can I ask Mr. Hill a couple of questions, actually? I think really, for me, the crucial issue is the dominance of this wall that faces onto the neighbouring properties. You know, whether this, I'd like Mr. Hill's sort of view on this, whether this is a material consideration, the scale and dominance. And also the lack of the impact upon the daylight of the gardens, whether that is material and that we have a responsibility to take that into account. Another question is, I notice that the applicants have mentioned about a footpath that may have been there in the past, and I just wondered whether that is a consideration that we need to take into account, Mr. Hill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. I think, Mr. Hill, do you want to come back now or come back, collect them later?
Yeah, it would be easy, Chair, if I could come back individually, because we could get a collection of a large number of questions. Okay. If the committee are happy with that. In terms of the footpath, that's covered by other legislation, so that's beyond our control. If there's a legal issue with regard to reinstating that, that would be for you know, the parish council, the town council, or whatever, to take that action should they so wish. But your comment in terms of the wall, the proximity of the building, in terms of overshadowing, yes, that's a material consideration. You know, in view of where it's located and its height, and the committee may consider that would, you know, result in an adverse impact in terms of overshadowing. It is located, admittedly, to the due south of those gardens, so yes, there may well be an impact there.
Thank you. I'm satisfied, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going over to Councillor Saunders, and I see your hand up, Councillor Manley, and then I see your hand up, Councillor Amy. Thank you. Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Chair. My questions sort of echoed Councillor O'Connor's in part, and I'd like, if possible, for Mr. Hill to put up what I believe was slide 10, which is the sort of artist impression of the shadowing of the gardens, which I was concerned that really didn't actually show a correct image of the shadowing as I see it on that spot. That's the one, the top one there. Actually, that would be an azimuth of probably greater than 40 degrees with the height of that building to show that much shadowing. So I think there's been a bit of poetic license being added to those artist impressions, I think. So I think the overshadowing would come much further to the north, effectively, elevation of that new property. So I was concerned about that, and you have answered Councillor O'Connor's question regarding whether we should consider that a material consideration. So thank you for that. Also, I noticed in one of the pictures from the rear, so basically taken again in a northerly direction from where we are now, and I forget the number of the slide there, Mr. Hill, but I think I noticed a rear gate, at least one rear gate from the properties in Tyring Close, and with the building going right up against that boundary, we're effectively closing off access to several of those properties. Now, if the applicant was one of the owners of one of those properties, I could understand it if it was just that rear access that was being changed, it wouldn't matter. We don't, of course, know where the applicant lives, and that may not be a consideration, but I was concerned anyway about the possibility of losing the rear access to those properties, which is obviously something that they've enjoyed for some while. And then I notice again on the material considerations and the conditions, that you've put there about the no development being approved, the normal one, until a construction management plan has been submitted. Of course, we've heard lots talked about, in particularly the objections here, about the existing access, the existing parking, access to driveways, etc. in that area. So the construction on this site is going to impact quite heavily on day-to-day access, at least during the construction. But I do understand and sort of support the idea that when the building is in place with its one parking spot, it wouldn't have any more impact than it's got now. I'm just concerned at the impact during the construction. I'm concerned about the height. The overlooking appears to have been mitigated by the amendments that have been made to this application. But I am still, however, seriously concerned about the effect of the loss of light to the rear of those properties in Tyring Close. Particularly, I would suggest the numbers, looking at this, anywhere from 6 to 12 with the sun and its arc in the sky there. I think that's all I had noted at the moment, Chair. Thank you very much for listening. I'll hear what everybody else has got to say. Chair, if you are talking, you are muted, sorry.
Mr. Hill, are there any points that need to be picked up for Councillor Saunders, please?
I don't think so. I mean, in terms of rear access, well, that's all going to be, it's who has a right. It's someone else's private land. Do these residents have a right to access that? Have they kept their gates because they've moved? I mean, I'm not going to comment on hearsay. I've got nothing in front of me that says there was a path there, and I don't know their rights of access over that land, so I can't comment on that. And the comments in terms of CEMP and construction, there certainly is enough land there in which to manage a construction of this sort. It would be tight, but that can be managed, and there is a condition on a CEMP. So I don't think construction per se should be a problem. Obviously, they have no right to extend or to use any of the hard standing or the surrounding area other than the land in which they own. So when they submit plans, if they were to get planning permission as part of that CEMP, they would have to show how they're going to manage that. And yes, there may be concern because you've only got a 1.8 2-metre high close boarded fence that runs along that northern boundary. So it would be important to ensure that privacy is safeguarded during construction as well. But I think the points made in terms of overshadowing and the impact that the building may have are fair, and I think those are reflected in the comments made by Councillor O'Connor as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Councillor Manley, and I'd just like to state for the benefit of this meeting that Councillor Jones has joined us. I don't know at what point you did join us, Councillor Jones, and perhaps we'll go back to that. Councillor Manley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Manley. I wanted to echo what the ward councillor, Councillor MacLeod, had said, and that I think this is a really interesting and innovative design, a really creative design for such a small space. But as on page 13 of our agenda, it does state that development of backland development, which is what this is, coming under policy DM30, requires development to be mindful of potential impact upon neighbouring residents. And I think it's quite been presented to us that I don't feel this is mindful of neighbouring residents. It's quite encroaching. So I would be happy to propose that the committee rejects this application or to second a similar suggestion later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manley. We'll go back to you after we've heard others. Thank you very much. And now we're over to Councillor Amy, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Graham Amy. Mr. Hill said that the building, the wall, was hard up against the fences of the properties, the two properties. Can I ask what the gap is? Because it does concern me that we've got a white wall. How on earth is that going to be maintained if it's hard up against the boundary of those other properties? I'm just thinking there could be a neighbour, dispute straight away if there's, some maintenance to be done, some painting to be done, etc. I understand the principle of the presumption in favour of building. Whether this meets the economic, social, environment objectives that go with it, given that it's been rejected twice before, albeit 20 years ago, I'm not sure. And perhaps Mr. Hill could comment on those aspects, the aspects of the presumption to build in this particular instance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Amy. Over to Mr. Hill for his comments, please.
Yeah, I'll just share a slide. This is the site plan, and you can see the rear gardens here. So what the arrangement is in that area, I couldn't say, but that looks like, this is from the applicant's plan, that's the rear garden boundary line. And you can see from their plan that their rear wall is pretty much hard up on there. There's no room for anything. So yes, maintenance would be an issue. It's one of those things, unfortunately, that many developments from your very small single-story rear garden extension to developments like this don't seem to take into account. And the only way it could be maintained is that you would need permission from the owners of the adjacent land to come onto their land to do any painting. Now, you do have access under the Access to Neighbouring Land Act to go in there and to maintain your property if that is necessary. But again, it does cause antagonism in some instances, and you need to make contact and hope that you can stay on good terms with your neighbours. So yes, maintenance will be an issue when you build a development this close up to land which you have no right to access on.
Councillor Amy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hill. I have the same problem where I live. I'm a metre away because the builder that built my house stole some land from the next door neighbour. So I have this problem with an almost vertical ladder to try and do maintenance, on my particular property. So I understand, the difficulties. Thank you.
The only thing I would just add to that is obviously they have the applicants have mentioned about the footpath, And if there is a right to a footpath and that is going to be challenged and those gardens do have to be cut back and the boundary moved, then you would potentially have a metre footpath running along that boundary, which may facilitate some sort of access. But to be perfectly honest, a metre wide footpath and trying to put a ladder up 6 metres high, I wouldn't want to be the person going on that
it's
ladder.
very difficult, I can assure you.
Thank you. Councillor Connor, you're coming back again. Do you have something fresh to offer?
Thank you, Chair. In the absence of any other contributions from colleague councillors, I was going to second Councillor Manley's proposal to object to this and to vote against it, unless, of course, anybody's got any other views that might sway me. But I am minded that, you know, the scale and dominance of this property and of this proposed property and the loss of daylight and sunlight to the neighbouring properties means to say that I feel that it's overdevelopment and we should not approve it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. And that actually puts, I can see your hand, Councillor Saunders, but it does rather put the ball back in your court, Councillor Manley. But for the sake of courtesy, Councillor Saunders, do you have something fresh to offer?
Yes, it was just also, sorry, it was just to also mention that the construction of that wall on the boundary, effectively on that fence line, would require even more access, in fact, invasive access into the rear gardens, because when you dig a trench for a wall, you don't have the trench right up against the end of the wall. You effectively have to have it either side, and then the wall goes in the middle of your trench. So I think there's lots of, whether that's a planning issue, not really, but it's certainly a construction issue and something that would have to be brought up in that item 8 on the conditions. So again, I think this is regarding the unneighbourly side of things, unless there's some real agreements made before this construction goes ahead. I'm not sure how they're going to construct it without taking some of the garden to do the work, let alone remove the fences at the rear of these gardens. So, yeah, I'm happy to go to the vote, Chair, based on the what Councillor Connor or whether Councillor Manley is proposing it. I don't mind. I'm happy to go to the vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go to the vote, just a few words from myself. Hearing colleagues, listening to our officers, it does see that this is a very overdeveloped and congested space. Seems very cramped for the neighbours. And as far as material considerations, it doesn't seem to be excessive for the space in which it is in. Over to you, Councillor Manley, please, for your proposal, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Manley, I propose that this committee objects to this application. I hope that's the correct terminology.
And Councillor Manley, may I just have your reasons for rejecting this application, please, based on material considerations? I think you've probably already said them if you want the truth.
Yes, that I don't feel this application is not mindful of potential impacts upon neighbouring residents.
Mr. Hill, thank you.
Yes, I heard that, and I think that if the committee go for a recommendation for refusal, I think the wording put forward by Councillor O'Connor probably summed it up more succinctly, and that was, and I'll read what I put down, that the development would, due to its scale, dominance and loss of daylight and sunlight, result in overdevelopment of the plot, detrimental to the amenity of local residents, and then we would add policies onto that. Councillor
Manley, have you consent?
Yes, that sounds perfect to me. I'd be more than happy as well for Councillor O'Connor to propose, and I'll second.
No.
But yes, good terminology.
You are there, Councillor Manley, and the seconder is Councillor O'Connor. I can see a hand up there, but we actually have a proposer and a seconder. Okay. Before we go further, I'd just like to check, if I may, with Councillor Jones, and perhaps officers, we can ask Councillor Jones when he joined us, if we may, please.
Yes, thank you. I joined you too late, so I shall abstain from commenting on this application.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are going to go to the vote, and on the table is a proposal from Councillor Manley, and that is to go against officer's recommendation and refuse this application based on the reasons mentioned. This has been seconded by Councillor O'Connor. So I'm going to the roll call, and I will now call each councillor in turn. And please may I see a show of hands at council. First of all, you are going to vote for, against or abstain. Councillor Graham Amy, please.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Linda Doohig, please.
Councillor Linda Doohig, against, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Silver Lord, please.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Imogen Makepeace, please.
Against. Are we voting against the motion or against the application?
You are voting against the application, that the one that has been proposed by Councillor Manley, seconded by Councillor O'Connor.
So should we be voting for Councillor Manley's
refusal?
Yes.
Refuse. Yeah.
So should we be saying for if we want to be against the proposal?
That's correct.
You vote for if you agree with the proposal from Councillor Manley and seconded by Councillor O'Connor.
So I am for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Okay, sorry, Chair. Apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence O'Connor.
I am voting against the recommendation of the officers. And in other words, for the proposal that Councillor Manley stated. Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Councillor Manley, in that kerfuffle, did I say Councillor Manley? It's your proposal.
I am for my proposal and against the application.
Thank you. I can see your hand, Mr. Hill. Councillor Papanikolaou.
Thank you, Chair.
Against, abstain.
I am for Councillor Manley's proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Christoph von Kerthy, please. Are you for, against, abstain for the proposal on the table?
I thought Mr. Councillor Saunders would be first before me, but okay, fine. I am for Councillor Millie Manley's proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Chair. I am equally for the proposal to refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to Mrs. Stone for her to give us the voting result, please. Mrs. Stone.
Chair, I'm sorry, but because of the earlier confusion, I did not record Councillor Lord's vote correctly, and I'm not sure, bearing in mind what Councillor Amy said, that he wishes to stick to the vote that he gave.
In that case,
can we take Councillor Amy's, Councillor Doohig's and Councillor Lord's votes again, please, the first three?
After the kerfuffle, why don't we make it simple?
Thank you, Chair.
We'll go right back to the beginning. I think this is fairer and more democratic. So first of all, we have a proposal on the table from Councillor Manley, and that is to reject the recommendation from the officers, which was to approve. And the proposal is to go against those recommendations and to refuse this application. We're going right back to the top. Okay, so in alphabetical order, Councillor Graham Amy, are you for, against or abstain?
I'm against this application and for Millie Manley's proposals.
Thank you. Councillor Linda Doohig, for, against or abstain?
Councillor Linda Doohig, I am for the proposal and against the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sylvia Lord, are you for, against or abstain, please?
I'm for Councillor Manley's representation.
Thank you. Councillor Imogen Makepeace, are you for, against or abstain, please?
I'm for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Millie Manley, are you for, against or abstain, please?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence O'Connor, are you for, against or abstain, please?
I'm for, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Nicola Papanicolaou, are you for, against or abstain, please?
For, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Saunders, are you for, against or abstain, please?
I'm for the proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Christoph von Kirche, are you for, against or abstain, please?
I'm for Councillor Millie Manley's proposal.
Thank you. We now go to Mrs. Stone for her to read us the result of the vote.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal has been to refuse Planning Permission has been carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. So, application number LW/20/0659, location land to the rear of 6 to 12 Tarring Close, South Heighton, East Sussex. Proposal, demolition of existing double garage and erection of 1 2-bedroom dwelling with associated landscaping, off-road car parking and cycle parking. Ward, Ouse Valley and Ringmer. Applicant, Mr. Penalina. And planning permission has been refused on the reasons given. Thank you. We now turn to agenda item 9, application number LW/20/0166. Location, area of seafront promenade, opposite Hardwick House, Westview and Sunken Gardens, Esplanade, Seaford. Proposal, part retrospective application for the erection of 8 non-habitable beach huts and 3 toilets in situ April-September inclusive, and the retention of 4 concession huts, 1 permanent, 3 in situ April to September inclusive at the Esplanade, Seaford. Ward, Seaford Central. Applicant, Miss I. Muland, but I believe it is actually for Seaford Town Council. Thank you very much, Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that, yes, it is Seaford Town Council who are the applicants on this one. Seafront Promenade, Seaford. Proposal is to install some huts, beach huts along the promenade, and as set out in the description of development, proposal is for 3 toilet huts, 4 concession huts, of which 1 will be permanent, and 8 beach huts set out in 4 pairs. Huts themselves are fairly standard, and I'm sure the committee know and have been or seen beach huts and those that have been utilised in Seaford. This is just an example of the toilets and the 3 toilets themselves. And those toilets, the 8 beach huts and the 3 of the 4 concession huts will only be on site between mid-April and the end of September in each year. So they are temporary structures. This just shows you the toilet facilities, which will be in a traditional beach hut, but with the Portaloo WC located within the hut itself. So they're far more sightly than the plastic Portaloos that are renowned for festivals and the like. The standard beach huts, again, there's some photos here to show you beach huts along the promenade already, but this just gives you an idea of the internal, very basic internal layout with a small decked area at the front. And the concession huts, which are slightly wider at 3.6 metres wide with double doors and a small platform step at the front. And again, there'll be 4 of those, but 1 of those will be kept in situ throughout the year. The others will be removed. And again, this is just showing you one of the normal beach huts itself, but this one is adapted for wheelchair accessibility. So this will be on the end and will allow people with mobility difficulties to make use of the hut with a small narrow ramp to provide access. Just some photos of the promenade here, and there's some points which I'm going to mention and respond to following the members' briefing earlier in the week. And again, things to note really is the width of the promenade and the height of the wall which separates the promenade from the main highway. This is, just for an example, this is one of the concession huts. So again, you can see its size and scale in relation to the promenade. And again, from this view, questions were raised about parking and using those concession huts in terms of loading and unloading. And again, some of the areas along there do have parking restrictions on them, but it's double yellow lines on the northern side, and there are parking spaces all the way along the promenade. And that's on a first come, first served. Yes, it does get extremely busy along there on a nice spring sunny day, but there is adequate space for people to utilise should they be running a business from one of those huts. And again, giving you a view back across to show you, I think, sorry, just jumping back, this is the communal garden over here, and this shot shows you the proximity of Hardwick Court, residential block of flats, which backs onto or fronts onto the promenade and the beach itself. And I think there are a number of representations from the occupiers of these buildings. Just a close-up of the concession hut, and you can see the double doors and the small step to the front. And you can see the hut itself is set on bearers. And again, another question was raised at Callover in terms of the fixing. And while the fixing itself isn't a planning matter per se, the huts will be set on tapered bearings, and then the hut's screwed or bolted down onto the bearers, and all of that can be removed come the autumn when the huts are removed from the site. And again, looking from the beach, in a collection of the huts and the various sizes, with a hut here which shows the access ramp, so a hut that's suitable for wheelchair access should that be needed. Just a couple of more things that issues that were raised. The intention is, as you can see from the layout plan, that the huts themselves, other than the concession huts which are located to the rear and the toilet huts, the beach huts will be located to the front of the promenade. So any overspilling shouldn't then impact on the promenade itself and would overspill and utilise the beach space, which is set at the back edge here. So any overspilling will be onto the beach and not onto the promenade. And that was an issue that some councillors raised. In terms of the toilets, again, the report sets out the frequency of cleaning, but again, just to clarify matters, this type of toilet is usually not cleaned on a weekly basis, but the town council has stated that they will be doing this, or it will be done and arranged to be done at least twice a week. Some issue was raised with regard to bins and refuse collection, and again, the promenade itself, there are many bins along there, so it's not envisaged that litter should or would be a problem. And I'm sure that those that are in concession huts will be encouraged to take any refuse home with them at the end of the day to dispose of in the normal way. Food, again, just clarifying that no food will be sold from the huts, just seasonal souvenirs, beachwear, etc. And again, that is conditioned. See condition 4 on page 32. And on page 31, again, another question was raised in terms of overnight sleeping. And again, there's a condition to prevent overnight use of the huts themselves. The final thing was about CCTV, and it isn't intended that any CCTV would be installed as part of this application. And again, for clarification, again, there's there on page 29 of the report, paragraph 8.3.7. As I've just mentioned, it should read, planning conditions will be used to ensure that the huts are not used as overnight accommodation and not are used as the report states there. So, Chairman, we are recommending approval as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hill. We now go over to Mrs. Norman for her to read out the public speeches, please. Mrs. Norman, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Hill for his presentation. It's Jennifer Norman from Democratic Services, and I can confirm that we have received 5 written representations in respect of this application, and I will begin with the first one, a statement received from Jeff Johnson, who's the planning officer, to be read on behalf of Seaford Town Council. Can I just remind everyone to please turn off your microphones? Thank you for allowing this statement to be read at your meeting today. When beach huts were first erected on this site in the 2019 season, it was understood that they did not require formal planning consent, as they were to be removed at the end of the season and stored over the winter. When the view was challenged by Lewis District Council following residents' complaints to the Town Council prepared an application for a certificate of lawful use. Following discussions in early 2020 with the District Council's Planning Department, it became clear that due to the number of huts in the scheme, it was unlikely that a certificate would be granted. Although the Town Council did not necessarily agree with this view, it was nevertheless agreed that a formal application would be prepared and submitted to achieve speedier resolution. Beach huts are an integral part of the character of any seaside town, large or small. They make a positive contribution on tourism, recreation, and the general well-being of the town. The report before you acknowledges these important points. As regards the objections, the simple fact that the huts will be visible from properties in the immediate area is not a good reason to refuse consent, as the report also confirms. The majority of the huts have been situated in front of the Esplanade Sunken Garden in order to avoid direct views from the residential properties on either side. The objectors argue that new beach huts are unattractive and should be kept to the fringes of the promenade, but the 2019 season showed that there was a clear demand for huts for rent in this central location. There is a long stretch of the promenade between the Martello huts and the Bonningstead promenade without any beach huts. Complaints about nuisance from the toilets and their location have been taken into account. An enhanced cleaning regimen will be put into operation to ensure nuisances are prevented. Steps have also been taken to maintain the free flow of pedestrians by locating the recreational huts on the edge of the promenade opening onto the beach. The Town Council will carry out its own review of the operation at the end of the season, and any further complaints received from residents will be fully considered. The provision of beach huts in this location will be of great benefit to the town and its visitors. The conditions set out in the report are accepted. The development is supported by local and neighborhood plan policies, and it is requested that consent be granted. And that is sincerely Jeff Johnson, Planning Officer on behalf of Seaford Town Council. Now move on to the second of the 5 written representations, and this is received from Mary Hart to be read on behalf of herself and residents of Hardwick House in objection to the planning application LW/20/0166. Dear Lewis District Council's Planning Applications Committee, I am the director of Hardwick House Freehold, representing the owners of the flats at Hardwick House on the Esplanade at Seaford. We have had serious concerns since their installation regarding the siting of the commercial beach huts, and in particular the toilets of the Esplanade opposite Hardwick House. Not only do they infringe on our views, bright, unsightly, and overly large sheds, but the 3 toilet huts sit directly in front of our property. Though the toilets are emptied once a week, I have had residents complaining the toilets are stinking in the summer months when the wind is blowing in our direction. I do understand there is no entitlement to a view, as one of Seaford Town councillors voraciously told me. However, we were not consulted at all about the positioning of the huts, and I understand from the local plan that the buildings should all be consolidated in front of Seaford Town Council Sunken Gardens, including the toilet huts. We all want Seaford to thrive and for locals and visitors alike to enjoy the benefits and charm of the Seaford seafront. However, we do not believe the installation of the large buildings and toilets and the overall commercialization Seaford Town Council seeks has been sensitively given the unspoilt nature of Seaford seafront. We have also had incidents of vandalism at the Beach Cafe, Frankie's, and young people lurking around the commercial huts during summer at night, climbing on the roofs of the buildings. And this brings us more trouble and noise to the residents, as we have elderly residents in Hardwick House, and they worry and distress. In short, we would like the toilets relocated either to the west of Frankie's Cafe or Concession, or to the east of the Beach Huts on the New Haven side, and for the council to consider siting the large commercial huts further to the east of our boundary on the New Haven side. We do have ground floor flats in Hardwick House, and in particular, the toilets are an absolute blot on the landscape. As you know, we have developed a cultivated a seaside garden, often admired and photographed by locals and visitors, and we did this not only for our residents' benefit, but also to complement the Seaford Town Council garden. In fact, we had some plants donated by Seaford Town Council members. So we would like to think that Hardwick House residents are indeed ambassadors of the local council. I do hope that the upcoming meeting today that you will give this letter your due considerations. Kind regards, Mary Hart. Now move on to the third of 5 written representations. And this is a statement received from Mr. Roger Murphy to be read on behalf of himself and other local residents in objection to planning application LW/20/0166. Dear members of the Planning Applications Committee, we would like to raise objections to the granting of planning permission for the Westview Beach Huts above. Having looked at the agenda application, we would comment as follows. 1. There is mention of a management and maintenance plan, which seems to make many assumptions. Many may be subjective, as we have not noticed any evidence to back these up. 2. The recent history from 2019 does not seem to bear this out, as there were multiple problems with overcrowding, no surveillance or checks on hut users, space and safety incidents. Indeed, the revised spacing plans will probably make things worse. 3. I highlight some of the details below from the petition which 225 people objected to. 1. The Seaford Town Council terms and conditions of hiring the huts laid down at item 9 that any furniture was only to be used in a 1-meter area in front of the hut. 2. During the summer months of 2019, the huts were hired out for many functions, including large numbers of people gathering and some parties up to 40 people. Subsequently, they often blocked almost all of the promenade use for cyclists, walkers, runners, and disabled vehicles. 3. As a result of our representation, Seaford Town Council admitted that the huts had caused problems, as described earlier, and decided to change the location of the beach huts for March 2020 and move them across the promenade from the roadside to the beach side to alleviate congestion. In our opinion, this will make the situation worse in terms of space, safety, and congestion. 4. In our opinion, the current proposed plans of siting the beach huts on the beach side of the promenade will not stop people using chairs and tables on the promenade rather than on the uneven stones, especially older or disabled people. As younger children and others go back and forth to cars, they will be coming out blind and going directly across the path of speedy cyclists, runners, and other promenade users. 5. The space left between the road wall and the back of the huts will be a relatively small width, creating all sorts of safety issues and hazards. 6. We recommend that the siting of the huts be moved to places where there is more space and fewer residences. Example, Bonningstead, Salts area, using the cafe as base for keys and safety boxes, etc., or towards the yacht club. And last, on top of all of the current issues of overcrowding and congestion will probably be deemed illegal under the government's COVID-19 laws for gatherings and social distancing, whereas moving to another place may find compliance. We would expect that the management and maintenance plan to be verified and circulated to all that it is agreed before any planning permission is considered. Yours sincerely, Roger Murphy, on behalf of local Seaford residents. And I'll now move on to the fourth of 5 representations, and this is a statement received from Lorraine Barrett to be read in objection to this planning application LW/20/0166. I, Lorraine Barrett, live directly behind the proposed site at 31 Green Lane. The erection of these huts erodes the natural beauty of the area, especially of the sunken garden. They are directly in my eye line, and not only do they obscure the already limited view of the sea, but it is psychologically depressing and claustrophobic for all. In the beginning, when I convinced Paradise Park into donating an abundance of large rocks for screening, I assumed this public garden would remain a place for people to relax in a harmonious and tranquil setting, whilst enjoying the sea views, which were almost totally blocked by the huts in 2019. Unfortunately, this area is also prone to antisocial behavior, as police records indicate, due to underage drinking, vandalism, and Class B drug use. This has improved with Mr. Blackburn's assistance. After all of this hard work, the beach hut rentals only exacerbate this problem. The overspill of drunken revelers leave their litter, excrement, and vomit in the gardens for others to clean up, including myself. Such parties create a health hazard, as the gardens are more accessible than any portaloo. Traffic congestion and parking also becomes an issue in the squash location, leading to accidents. There are public toilets which are regularly cleaned and monitored under 5 minutes away in South Street behind the Wellington pub. This encourages people to actually walk into town and support local businesses. Portaloos create unnecessary clutter. They are unsightly, unhygienic, and smell and are repugnant to many people. They also incur additional costs due to emptying. What is lacking is a finger post indicating the location of toilets and extending opening hours thereof. The officers for this committee do not live on the seafront, as I have since 2002. So whatever your decision today, remember you can go home to your cozy dwellings, leaving the seafront behind you, whilst myself and others are left to literally pick up the pieces. The huts should be relocated to opposite the Salts Recreation Ground with all its amenities. Here they do not interfere with anyone's quality of life. The Human Rights Act states a person has the right to peaceful enjoyment of all their possessions, which includes the home and other land. Thank you. And I will now move on to the 5th and final representation in respect of application LW/20/0166. And this is a statement received from Keith Blackburn, who is the chairman of the Seaford Community Partnership. And this is in support of the application. I wish to support this planning application. After extensive public consultation over more than 3 years, the Seaford Neighborhood Plan was supported by 89% of those voting in a referendum. Part of the consultation included a survey issued to all households in Seaford, in which 84.5% of respondents stated that the plan should support tourism to ensure local businesses remain viable. The neighborhood plan included three elements applicable to this planning application. First, the design policy SEA2 states that the design should have regard to the distinct and attractive characteristic of Seaford and its setting. Secondly, the development on the seafront policy SEA6 states that A, development should not detract from the natural, open, uncommercialized environment of the seafront, and E, development should conserve and enhance the amenity use of the seafront. Thirdly, Community Aspiration 1, Seafront and Tourism, states that D, there should be better maintenance of the paths and walls along the seafront, as well as sensitive enhancement of the man-made features. Impact Seaford's Economic Action Plan's vision includes Seaford should make greater use of its coastal location through a regenerated seafront that is easily accessed from the town center and key transport hubs. Within this action plan, there is a project which is nearing completion led by the Seaford Community Partnership and the Seaford Chamber of Commerce, known as the Gateway Project. This includes signs on the pavement showing a route from the seafront to the town center and signs on the seafront advertising the facilities available in the town center. The proposed beach huts, including their rustic design and location mainly in front of the beach garden, comply fully with the requirements of the above planning policies and the economic action plan. The beach huts will encourage families to spend time in Seaford and give them the opportunity to explore the town and to bring money to local businesses on the seafront and in the town center. This is demonstrated by the popularity of the beach huts in their first year of operation. In addition, the income generated from letting the beach huts will provide much needed funds to the town council and keep council tax as low as possible. The community partnership built and maintained the beach garden and are frequently in that part of the seafront. The design and number of beach huts is modest and very much in keeping with the ambiance of that area of the seafront and beach garden. Already with simple, well-run, and very popular kiosk, sand pit, and traditional deck chairs on the beach. The presence of the huts and the commitment activity will very much reduce vandalism, drug peddling, antisocial behavior in the nearby beach garden. I endorse your officer's recommendation that this planning application should be approved. Yours sincerely, Keith Blackburn, former chairman of the Seaford Neighborhood Planning Steering Group, chairman of the Seaford Community Partnership, and member of the Board of Impact Seaford. And thank you, Chair. That concludes all the written representation received in respect of this application.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Norman. So I see a number of hands up, and I should be perfectly honest with you, they all flashed up at exactly the same time, really. So I should do it, if you don't mind, Councillor Saunders, if you can possibly do it ladies first, if you don't mind. Okay, thank you. So first of all, we've got Councillor Makepeace, then we're going to have Councillor Papanikolaou, then we're going to have Councillor Saunders, and then we are going to have Councillor Amy. Thank you, Councillor Makepeace.
Thank you. My question is probably quite a simple one. And I was hearing the comments about the location of the Portaloos, and I wondered whether it is possible to move the Portaloos further west along the Esplanade and away from directly being in front of Hardwick House. And I also wondered whether adding to that, have the residents' opinion that putting up signage to the existing public toilets and asking Seaford Town Council to extend their opening hours might actually also be a very good idea. Perhaps that might reduce the number of Portaloos needed. If that's a question that Mr. Hill could answer. If he
over to Mr. Hill for that, please.
Yes, on the second point about the signage, that's not a matter for this planning application, so I couldn't comment on that. On the first point about relocating the Portaloos, yes, it's possible, but it's not part of this application. You've got what you've got in front of you, and that is what you have to make a decision on. You could certainly defer it, and we could then go back and ask for them to be relocated, which would mean we'd have to go out and reconsult again, and we go through the whole process. So the simplest thing is determine what you have in front of you tonight. You either find it acceptable or you don't, and then the consequences of that, we will deal with.
Councillor Makepeace, are you content with that, please?
Thank you, yes.
Thank you. Over to Councillor Papanikolaou, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For anybody that isn't familiar, I know Councillor Jones said he couldn't travel to the area Could I just say that where the Esplanade is and Marine Parade is quite a wide road, that the beach huts are very, very far away from any residential properties. So I can't see how any smell from anything could travel to a block of flats that have a huge garden in front of them. They've got to cross the main seafront road, go onto the Esplanade, which is on the beach. You know, I do run businesses in the town and I am on the Esplanade, so I do know how, you know, the road, I'm there 7 days a week. So I think it's a bit unfair the way the residents have portrayed that their residency is near to the beach huts. It's quite a few hundred metres away. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that there is not any residences, blocks of flats that are immediately near to where the beach huts are going to go. I'd hope that helps everybody. So the smells, I don't see how they could travel across the main road and across gardens. So I think it would be a bit difficult. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Papanikolaou. Councillor Saunders, please.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of points. I realise that this certainly wouldn't attract any seal money. I appreciate that. But what we are considering here is something for Seaford Town Council, which effectively they're going to be making some money from. I'm just concerned if we've got any councillors here that might sit on Seaford Town Council, and just a point of order, in case there is a conflict of interest that might need to be raised with our legal representative. That's one point. The other thing is that this is part retrospective. Presumably, if we as a committee choose to reject this application, they would be asked to remove what they've already got down there as well. So I just that I need answered by Mr. Hill. So there's a couple of little points there. Other than that, I do actually walk along here quite often. As you know, I now live in Bishopstone, and we do walk along the seafront, so I'm aware that there are a number of beach huts already and concessions along there, including Councillor Papanikolaou's, and we do use them. And on the face of it, it could actually, at the moment particularly, with a lot of people using it for exercise, you could argue that we could do with some more. I know that I'm sure that Councillor Papanikolaou's concession is very busy at the moment, as are the others. There are long queues. I think the arguments put forward in one of the objections that I noted, referring to COVID-19 restrictions, of course, we're all hoping that they're going to be removed soon, and we'll be able to get back to physical meetings, which would be wonderful. So there's just those couple of points about if we've got any Seaford Town councillors, whether or not that is an interest that should have been declared, and if there's a problem there because the council will be making money out of this, and also the fact this is part retrospective, and if we were to refuse rather than approve, whether that would be an issue for the buildings that are already there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, before we go further, I think there's two questions to two separate officers, if you don't mind. So your first question, as far as Seaford Town councillors, I think we go over to Mrs. Stone on that one, please. And the second question over to Mr. Hill. Mrs. Stone, please. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. I mean, firstly, I have to put my hands up. Have we got Seaford Town councillors on the committee?
Yeah.
Councillor Amy, you're Seaford Town councillor.
I'm new.
No.
You have like me. I was just wondering, Councillor Lord, if anyone here was. If there isn't, that's fine. I just wanted that clarification.
I wasn't aware that we had a Seaford Town councillor on the committee, so I think that's not a problem, Councillor Saunders. But had there been,
that's fine. If it isn't, there was just that point, Mrs. Stone. That's absolutely fine.
Okay, we can clear that away.
Concerned. Someone like myself or Graham, we're on town council as well as district, and that would be an issue. And that was just a point, and I wasn't aware, and I'm not pointing any fingers or anything. I just wanted to have the question answered. The other one, obviously, is from Mr. Hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Over to Mr. Hill. Thank you.
Yes, I'll just share a slide on this as well, because I was going to respond to a point that Councillor Papanikolaou made as well. Yes, if there was an issue in terms of the committee decided to refuse the application, then yes, we would take whatever action is needed to seek the removal of any huts that are already on the site. And we would go and liaise and discuss with Seaford Town Council in terms of how they wish to take it forward. I'm just putting this slide up again just to show you the location. I'm just going to run through a couple of things because obviously some issues were raised, representations. And again, this is the recreation ground, this is the garden, and you can see here in the back, you just see the corner here of Hardwick House. And the toilets themselves are proposed to be located on the plan submitted by Seaford Town Council in front of Hardwick House, behind the toilet cubicles, which are set within the beach huts themselves. You've got the roadway and then the private garden in front of that before you get to Hardwick House itself. This gives you an idea of the location. So just the other side of this concession hut, you'd have the toilets. You then have the separation distance of the road, the garden, and this is Hardwick House. So just to give you an idea of the proximity of the facilities. And again, someone else mentioned about the closeness and the width of the esplanade. And I think that this one shows you, again, these are the concession huts and you've got people in front here. And you can get a fair number of people side to side there. And again, the esplanade here. So you've got fairly good clearance behind those. And even with the slightly smaller huts, which are the beach huts, which would be located at the front edge of the esplanade, you still have a significant distance in terms of being able to pass quite safely, in my opinion, behind them and travel along the esplanade itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Councillor Amy, please. Thank you. Then Councillor O'Connor, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. 10.2, the conditions, item 1, and no time must the beach huts be used as overnight sleeping accommodation. I wonder if we can put something on that there is a time there. I'll tell you for why. You could have a wonderful party till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock with no sleeping at all. And I'm just thinking, as an ex-sea fisherman, they would be absolutely ideal if you're fishing on the beach there and you've got a tilly lamp going in there and you're cooking in there. You're not sleeping. My point is that I think there should be time limited for you know, all aspects of it. You know, might be 10 o'clock, might be 11 o'clock, but that was one point. My other point is, I wonder if we can write in somewhere that the effluent, the waste, is disposed of to a foul water system. My concern is there are drains all the way along there, and one assumes that those drains also get rid of the seawater when the spray comes over. And I would hate to think that all of a sudden Seaford loses its bathing water standard because somebody has just tipped the effluent straight down the drain, which might be a surface water drain, into some kind of you know, system that eventually will leach out into the sea.
Yes, absolutely. Comments there in terms of hours. If the committee feel that putting a restriction on the hours of use of the huts is required, then I think that that would be a legitimate concern and something that we could adapt condition 1 to cover. And in terms of effluent, if councillors look on page 31 at condition 3, that does set out the requirements to submit details to us on waste storage and removal, effluent management. So when they come in with that, they should tell us how and where that effluent is going to be pumped to and disposed of.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Amy, I mean, whilst we're discussing this, then surely we should come up with some kind of time to give some indication to officers. And I think it would be appropriate for those who live nearer it, what would be seemed reasonable on a rare, hot, sunny day. What would be the thought professionally from officers would be reasonable, please, as far as time? Mr. Hill, what would be reasonable, please?
Really depends on your bedtime, doesn't it, and how close you are to the hut. So I mean, if you're renting a hut and it's a very pleasant summer's evening, the sun doesn't go down till 9:30, 10 o'clock. How much beyond that do you think is reasonable to allow people to be out and enjoy themselves? And yes, noise at night does travel as well and can be disturbing. So what would be reasonable? An hour after sunset?
After sunset. Yeah, that's what I'd written down.
Can I just go to actually Councillor Lord, although I do see your hand, Councillor Connor, but Councillor Lord, I believe, lives in Seaford. I'd just like some thoughts on Councillor Amy's idea of the time limit. Councillor Lord, please. I see your hand, Councillor Buncurthy.
Hello, councillors. I went on to Seaford Town Council's website and it actually stipulates on there that they're going to be open from 8 a.m. in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And keys are going to be collected from Frankie's kiosk. And they have to be there. And if they don't take the keys back at 10 o'clock, there's a £45 fine.
Councillor Amy?
I thank Councillor Law for that. I wasn't aware of that. I hadn't looked on the website. So thank you very much indeed for that. I'm very satisfied with that.
Thank you. So we're over to officers for you to thereby include that, and then that will match what is already in place, it seems.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that, Councillor Lord. If the committee move to approve this and are satisfied that with that restriction, we can adapt condition 1 to include the 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Operational times, use times.
Thank you. Okay, you content? I can see your hand, Councillor Von Kirky, don't worry. Are you content with that, Councillor Amy and Councillor Lord, please? Yes?
Yes, I am.
Yes, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor O'Connor, then it'll be Councillor Von Kirky. Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair. Very quick point. I was going to raise about the timings, but the other thing I wanted to just sort of clarify, the beach huts, not the concessions, the other beach huts, does the door open onto the promenade, thus causing blockage of the promenade by people, or does it open onto the beach itself? Thank you.
Yeah, the intention, it would be a bit odd if it opened onto the promenade. You'd rent a beach hut that looked at the buildings opposite and the flank wall. No, the plans show that they open to the front, so onto the beach. So if there's any overspill of deck chairs and things from the hut, it's on the shingle, it doesn't block the promenade.
Exactly my point. Thank you, Mr. Hill, because that was one of the concerns that was expressed by residents. So I think that's covered that off. Thank you. I'm content, Chair.
Thank you. And now we're over to Councillor Von Kirky, and I see your hand, Councillor Saunders. Thank you.
Councillor Lord has already answered my question about the timing. Thank you.
Good. It's always good to have local input, isn't it? Councillor Saunders, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to help to answer Councillor O'Connor's query there. The huts that are there all are open onto the promenade, but I remember that when we spoke about this before, there was a concern about the sort of overspill from the front of these huts and whether there would be a possibility of putting some sort of condition in to say that you can only erect deck chairs, tables, etc., a certain distance out from the beach huts themselves, so as not to block the access along that promenade, because it does narrow in certain areas and it is a shared path for both cyclists and pedestrians. So it does get, it is a bit awkward and sometimes a little bit dangerous when particularly young children who've got no sense of speed on bikes and things. So I think if we could possibly add a condition to say that the erection of deck chairs, tables, etc., can only be a certain distance out, and I leave that up to Mr. Hill and possibly Councillor Lord, who I know lives there. I know I walk along there quite often with my wife and family, but yeah, I just think that it's worth putting that up because they do tend to, it's been spoken about before, those owners of those beach huts do tend to sort of take over the whole promenade, particularly when restrictions are are lifted, and there'll be, more family gatherings around those beach huts. Thank you, Chair.
Very quickly, Mr. Hill, I'm just going to quickly go to Councillor Lord. She might have some information as to that anyway. Do you, Councillor Lord?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Thank you.
On Seaford, as I went on the hub about this particular issue. There's going to be a restriction that nobody can actually put a table or chair on the promenade. It's got to be on the front, on the shingle.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hill, I think we should be consistent in what we do tonight then, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely up to the committee. I mean, I don't think that it necessarily requires condition. The huts are built on the shingle side, so they face onto the shingle. If you open the doors, the natural inclination is to spill out onto the beach, and that is the intention, because I'm looking at some of the slides I showed you tonight with the beach hut set at the back, then yes, you do get this blockage and people do spill out. So the natural spill out, bearing in mind these huts are going to be quite close together, the intention would be to spill out. But if councillors feel that there is an issue, then again, we can put a restriction on saying that any deck chairs or paraphernalia shall be located on the shingle and not on the to the sides of the beach hut. But
Chair,
again, looking at the plans,
I'm happy. Sorry, Chair, I'm happy. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Hill. I'm happy, and I apologise. I forgot they were onto the shingle rather than the other ones along the road. So I apologise. In this instance, there's no need for it. If the other ones are being covered, the existing ones also happy. So sorry to raise that, and I'm sorry for my mistake. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Thank you.
that's fine. That's fine.
I just want to be sure that we're consistent with the actual local town council as well. Are we, Mr. Hill? Yes.
Well, as I say, if they have their own regulations associated with the huts, then I think that's fine. That's down to them. I think from our perspective and a planning perspective, looking at where they're going to be located, and even if you're looking at the layout plan as they're in pairs, even if you do put a table on the promenade, you're not going to stick it behind your hut. You're going to more stick it to the side of the hut anyway, so there won't be any increased obstruction. And the natural inclination is straight to the shingle beach anyway.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hill. I'd just like to make a few comments. And I'm afraid it is about the toilet facilities. Should there be a very lovely few days in the summer holidays, it does say here on 8.37, then of course it goes on to condition 3, as far as the toilet facilities would be emptied once a week and cleaned twice a week. That really wouldn't be enough. I'm not discussing the affecting of the neighbours who, of course, have made their contribution, but for as far as hygiene and as far as any family or person who goes on that beach, and I don't know how that could be strengthened in any way. Perhaps you could help on that, Mr. Hill, as far as hygiene, environmental health.
With regard to the toilets, there's a degree of ambiguity on those, because local councils, town councils, parish councils have permitted development rights, and this has been, as you heard from the representation, there has been some toing and froing between the council and Seaford Town Council in terms of what they can and can't do, and we have got this application to be submitted. There's a degree of ambiguity on the toilets because Part 12 of the GPDO, the General Permitted Development Order, does allow local councils to carry out certain things and build certain things and to locate certain things on land which is either their land or under their control for activities which they are responsible for. And you could argue that providing toilet facilities for the public's use is one of those facilities. So it could be that, you know, in itself, the 3 toilet huts don't actually require planning permission per se, but we have got them put in here and we can control the whole block of development. If there was, you know, the parish council, the town councillor adamant that twice a week is enough. If it transpires that there was an awful lot of smells which people found really unacceptable, unbearable, there is the Environmental Protection Act, which will cover those sort of issues if a development, a property is causing fumes and odours which is detrimental to residential amenities. So in that case, environmental health would be involved, and that may be a simple notice which requires the toilets then to be emptied with greater frequency than they're proposing at the moment. But that's something that can be monitored.
Thank you, Mr. Hill, for that. I mean, Seaford is, even where I live, which is nearer to Haywards Heath, the families here, if there is a hot day, it's Seaford where they will go. And I think it's so important that we keep a clean promenade and sea. And I do see a hand from Councillor Doohig, please. And then I think we've discussed this quite at length. So, Councillor Doohig, Councillor Von Kerthy, I think you've been spoken for, have you? You're content?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. It was fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doohig, please.
Yes, just a quick one. Thank you, Chair. The hygiene and cleaning of these toilets. We may still be in restrictions under this the COVID situation, and if these toilets are only going to be emptied or cleaned once or twice, how does that affect the cleaning of them during the COVID situation? Because I'm thinking of okay, they're not these are brick built toilets, but in Peacehaven in the park, Peacehaven Town Council employ a person that cleans the toilets twice a day. So my main question is, surely there should be extra conditions or availability for the toilets to be cleaned and wiped down and sanitised during this COVID situation. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there. That isn't a planning matter. That will be down to hygiene and down to the council and other legislation. It's not a planning matter. It would be down to the hygiene management of the toilets themselves.
Yes, I understand that. I just wondered, can it not even be put in as a condition under this?
It wouldn't be reasonable. We have no expertise, and it's not a planning function to set out hygiene requirements on toilets, I'm afraid.
I understand that, Mr. Hill, thank you, but it's still very alarming. Thank you.
You're coming back to councillors, and I hope there's going to be some fresh comments, please. Yes, Councillor Papanikolaou, I think. Then Councillor Lord, but we then must go to the vote after this, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a quick one, because obviously I do run, if I can help with the toilet situation. Seaford Town Council do have the toilets cleaned twice a day at the Martello. So this is due to COVID, and in the last year that has been the case since the toilets have been open. So I would have thought they would have extra measures for any other toilets. So I've got a business in the Salts and one at the Gateway. So I know we all do have twice a day cleaning. So I would have thought during COVID, if it helps you, that would be in place. I can't say for sure, but, you know, I know with the other toilets that is the case. Thank you.
Thank you for that local information. Councillor Lord, and then that will be that. Please, Councillor Lord.
I can just tell Councillor Dunhig the erection of the beach huts has been put back to 2021 in view of the issue at the moment.
Thank you very much. That was helpful. So I'd just like to go back to Councillor's amended conditions, and perhaps I'll go back to Mr. Hill on that so that we can double check exactly what we're voting for. My understanding is certainly the condition 1, which is time limited. Would you agree, Mr. Hill? 10 o'clock?
Yeah, so I've got that we will adapt, amend condition 1 to no overnight sleeping, and that the hours of use shall be from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Thank you. That's my understanding too. And it seems from what Mr. Hill said, as far as general permitted development, it's a matter of environmental health and locals keeping an eye on the toilet situation in high season. I think that's a fair comment on that. Okay, so do I have a proposal to go with the officer's recommendation and approve this planning application, please? Do I have a proposal?
I'll propose it, please.
Okay, so I've got 2 hands up then. So Councillor Lord proposing Councillor Papanikolaou? Are you?
Yes, Chair, I'll second Councillor Lord's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. And with the amended condition as aforementioned. Yes? Okay. So we have in front of us a proposal from Councillor Lord, seconded by Councillor Papanikolaou, to go with the officer's recommendations for approving this planning application with amended conditions. So we shall now go to the vote, and I will call each councillor in turn. All those in favour of going with the officer's recommendations and approving planning application. Councillor Graham Amy, please.
For the application.
Thank you. Councillor Linda Doohig, please.
Councillor Linda Doohig, for.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Jones, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Silverlord, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Imogen Makepeace, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Millie Manley, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence O'Connor, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Nicola Papanikolaou, please.
For. She's muted.
Councillor Papanikolaou. I have to officially hear you. Can you please?
Sorry, Chair, I lost you for a moment. For, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Saunders, please.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Christoph von Kerthy, please.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. I'd like to turn to Mrs. Stone for her to give us the result of the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the vote for granting planning permission with the amended condition has been carried.
Thank you very much. So application number LW/20/0166, location area of seafront promenade opposite Hardwick House, Westview and Sunken Gardens Esplanade, Seaford proposal, part retrospective application for the erection of 8 non-habitable beach huts and 3 toilets in situ April to September inclusive, and the retention of 4 concession huts, 1 permanent, 3 in situ April to September inclusive at the Esplanade Seaford Ward, Seaford Centre, applicant, and it is for Seaford Town Council, and planning permission has been granted. Thank you. I'm just going to ask courteously if colleagues on the planning committee are happy to continue, or whether you'd like a little pause. Are you all right? Yes, you are. Thank you. So the next item is item 10, date 10th March 2021, application number LW/20/0880, location garage site Mill Road, Ringmer, BN8 5JA, proposal demolition of existing vacant garages and construction of 1 wheelchair accessible 5-bedroom bungalow with associated hard standing and soft landscaping. Applicant Lewes District Council, care of Leighton Row, Ward, Ouse Valley and Ringmer. Recommendation grant planning permission. Mr. Hill, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this one is the garage site at Mill Road in Ringmer. This one is coming to you because it's council's own development. The proposal is to demolish the existing garages, which are shown located here on the plan. Site located on the southern side of Mill Road, and to erect in its place a 5-bedroom bungalow. Yes, it is large, but it's for the specific needs of a family with specific needs. The area itself is characterised by bungalows, so albeit that it is significantly larger than those, is very much in keeping with the surrounding built form. This is the layout of the plot. This is Mill Road. The garages would sit in here, so they will be demolished. You would have a fairly large footprint bungalow compared to those of the surrounding properties. It would have 2 off-street car parking spaces, 1 with an EV charging point, and the rooms themselves, 3 of the bedrooms are linked directly to wet rooms, and are fully compliant with Part M of the building regs. So they're sort of the highest space standards for people with disabilities and to meet their functional needs. Front of the property has a ramp going up to access. The building itself will be built on a fabric first approach, highly sustainable PV panels on the roof, as you can see from the slide here. As I say, one car charging point as well, and a number of environmental, ecological enhancement in terms of bee boxes, bird boxes, etc., and bug hotels. This is just giving you an idea of the size of the building in terms of its nearest neighbour, with a ridge height of 5.29 metres and this at 5.23. So very much in keeping with the scale and massing, other than the footprint, with its neighbours. This is the front elevation, and again, a very typical bungalow, and it sort of belies and hides its sort of overall footprint and size. These are just some artist's impressions, and these two shots down here are looking from Mill Road itself. The top two are at the rear, and the part of the side showing the parking area. These are the two front elevations from Mill Road, and the trees here already exist and are to be retained. Looking at a couple of photographs, this is Mill Road looking west, so it's going to be set in here. These garages will be demolished. The building will be set down here, approximately a metre back from the back edge of the pavement. So yes, it will be built forward of the building line, but it's your officer's opinion that that wouldn't be detrimental to the wider aspect of the road or the street scene itself. And again, you can see from the photo that bungalows are the predominant form there, albeit that they are occupied by more elderly residents than are proposed for this. This is a family dwelling. And again, just going slightly further along the road, now looking to the east. And again, you can see the site and its relationship with the adjacent bungalows, whose back gardens are on this side, face the other way. And again, the aspects of the street scene that will be retained, the frontage trees and the hedging there, which will have a close boarded fence behind to give the occupiers of the dwelling some privacy. You'll note from the report that there are a number of representations from two local residents, largely, and those are set out on page 39. But just drawing members' attention to the objections really from Ringler Parish Council, who feel that building in forward of the building line is unacceptable, but don't really qualify that any further. They also state that the building is not in keeping with the area because the predominant form is 1 and 2 beds for older people. And as I've made clear, this is a 5-bedroom one for a family with very specific needs that will go in here. And finally, parking issues. They're objecting on the basis that only 2 car parking spaces are provided on this plot. And we do accept that, yes, the parking standards for a building of this size would normally be 3 spaces, but I think in view of the fact the needs of the occupiers of the property, one of the spaces is full disabled vehicle width to allow people to get in and out of the vehicle safely and comfortably. And the other point I'd raise is that the street itself has no parking restrictions on it, and again is relatively free of parked vehicles. So for the displacement of a single vehicle onto the street, I don't think is going to either prejudice safety or impede the free flow of traffic. So officers are comfortable with recommending to the committee an approval tonight as set out on the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. We'll now go over to Mrs. Norman for her to read out the public speeches. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Hill. Jennifer Norman in Democratic Services. We have received one written representation in respect of this application, and the statement is received from Leighton Rowe to be read on behalf of Lewis District Council, who are the applicant in support of this application, LW/20/0880. As the Housing Authority, the District Council has the responsibility of delivering homes for households with special needs. Working jointly with the occupational therapist at East Sussex County Council, a family was identified with a significant number of acute medical needs, whose housing needs can only be met by a specially designed home with many accessible features. The site at Mill Road, Ringmer, was selected by Lewis District Council as being an ideal site for the development of one bungalow, as it is on the street of low-rise housing and is adjacent to the council-owned older persons housing scheme. Excuse me. The home needs to be large enough for all occupants to have their own bedroom, as well as specialist bathrooms and overnight provision for a carer. However, the family themselves are not able to drive due to disability, but they need larger accessibility vehicles to collect them, meaning the only 2 large accessibility spaces have been included with the property, which also allows space for a carer to visit. The internal design of the bungalow is very specific to the needs of one particular family, and if in future the council wanted to use this property for other households, it would require extensive reconfiguring inside and would likely need a new planning consent to convert it to 2 smaller bungalows. In this scenario, there is space for an additional parking bay for 2 cars to be installed on opposite side of the property. Thank you, Leighton Rowe, Housing Development Manager for Lewis District Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you, Mrs. Norman. And I saw the hand of Councillor Jones. Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Really interested in this one because I read in 3.3 that it's a scheme for over 55s, and that from what Leighton Rowe said, that they had a particular family in mind at this juncture. I'm trying to get my head around this in terms of one family with them all being over 55 and with varying needs of assistance. It's not, I'd like some more information. I understand what happens when they don't have over 55s. They're going to have to refigure the rules about how they divide it into the property into 2 properties to allow for it. But at the moment, it just seems to me one family over 55s with special needs is a very, very unusual. Where in actual fact do the carers sleep if it's a 24-hour caring system that's required? Where do they sleep within that property? So perhaps Mr. Hill can give us some clarity on this, if you can follow what I've been saying, and in terms of all over 55, all having special needs, all requiring probably carers of one description or another. Is that a 24-hour care requirement or not? How do those people look after them? Okay, so can I hand that over to Mr. Hill for some response on that one?
Mr. Hill.
Yeah, just clarification, paragraph 3.3 of the report. What that means is that the surrounding bungalows that's a housing development for over 55, not this bungalow itself. And the bungalow itself, as I say, it's already, I showed you the plans. You've got 3 bedrooms there which meet Part M, and which meet the slightly lesser standards. And if they did have to have carers in as a 5-bed unit, I'm sure arrangements would be made. But in response to your main point there, it's not that this is for over 55s. The surrounding development at Mill Road is for over 55s.
Councillor Jones, content?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Understood.
Sorry, Councillor O'Connor, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to obviously thank everybody involved in meeting this need for a disabled family, which is obviously great news for them. And a lot of work's gone into this, from the therapists as East Sussex County Council through to Lewis District Council, Leighton Rowe and his team. So yeah, I don't have any reservations. I note the reservations of residents locally, and yeah, okay, it's introducing some younger people into the area, but they've got particular needs, and this seems to fit those needs. So I'd be quite happy to propose this, Chair, but obviously subject to other councillors' comments if there was objections from other councillors. But thank you. I would be happy to propose this, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Manley, please.
Councillor Manley, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to take this opportunity to praise the application and particularly on its sustainability features. And it's really great to see a covered store for 5 cycles, including 1 electric bike and charger. So that's really great, as well as photovoltaic panels and other sustainability features. And it's obviously providing a home for a specific family who are really in need. So I would happily also propose that we approve this application or second for Councillor O'Connor.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other hands. So I think, Councillor O'Connor, you... Mrs. Stone's come in.
No, only just to get ready for the vote, Chair, and just to mention, Chair,
ready. Okay.
Chair, sorry to interrupt, Chair. Did you know you had your camera off?
I can see it
now.
I can see it, Chair.
It is now.
Oh,
no,
no, it's gone off now.
Way.
It was okay.
Click it again, Councillor Davey. Click it again and you'll be back on.
I never went.
No, I didn't think you did either, but there we are.
That is off. That is on.
That's it, you're
I
on
can
now.
see you now, Chair. Maybe it was my internet connection. I couldn't see you throughout that application, but that's fine.
No, it never changed itself, truly. No genie, no genie.
I can see you now.
Councillor O'Connor, I think, now, hold on a second, before we go to your proposal. I do see Councillor Saunders, and I also see Mr. Hill coming back there. So, Councillor Saunders, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, normally, something like this with a family home being built in amongst what is historically and generally for elderly people this area, I would have had some concerns about it. And, you know, with the setting of precedents, which we always talk about as well, almost the creep of young children into elderly residence areas. That's not quite the right description, but I'm reasonably happy with this. I also welcome the sustainability improvements that have been put in here with the PV panels, etc., the electric chargers and the bike store, which presumably is going to be for visiting welfare assistants, whatever you want to call them, carers, because the family themselves can't drive. So I'm presuming that's going to be for visitors and assistance to the household. It is a shame that a suitable site could not have been found within our district to house the family in an area which, you know, hopefully would benefit from being around other families and young families. It is a shame, but we are where we are. Mr. Rowe has found this site. It's come up with what I think is a good design. I'm happy to support the proposal. So if you haven't got a supporter for the proposal, I'm happy to do so. But otherwise, happy to go to the vote, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hill's hand is up, actually.
Yep, just a point of clarification, really. The wonders of technology. I've been able to clarify just a quick point. Councillor Jones mentioned about the over 55s, and I mentioned that generally it's the whole estate there, the whole area is for over 55s. But in terms of clarifying this one, apparently both parents, the occupiers of this dwelling, are over 55, but the other occupiers, the other members of the family, need medical needs, have medical needs, and therefore the need for this dwelling in this location.
Thank you, Mr. Hill, for that. The only point I would make is referring to Ringler Parish Council is generally speaking, and of course every case has to be looked at individually, as we not encouraged to support building further than the current building line. I just noted that. But let's go back, I believe, to Councillor O'Connor. May I have a proposal, please, Councillor O'Connor?
I propose, Chair, that we accept the recommendation of the officers to approve this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Councillor Manley, Did you wish to second?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I second that.
Thank you. So that's a proposal on the table that is to go with the officer's recommendation of granting planning permission, proposed by Councillor O'Connor and seconded by Councillor Manley. So with no more ado, let us go to the vote. So in alphabetical order as normal. Councillor Amy, please.
For the application, please, Chair.
Councillor Doohig, for, against, abstain.
Councillor Linda Doohig, for. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tom Jones, for, against, abstain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Silverlord, for, against, abstain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Imogen Makepeace, for, against, abstain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Millie Manley, for, against, abstain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence O'Connor, for, against, abstain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Nicola Papanakolaou, for, against, abstain.
For. Thank you.
Councillor Steve Saunders, for, against, abstain.
For, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Christoph von Kirche, for, against, abstain, please.
For.
Thank you. So that is application LW/20/0880 location, garage site, Mill Road, Ringmer, BN8 5JA, proposal. Demolition of existing vacant garages and construction of one wheelchair accessible 5-bedroom bungalow with associated hard standing and soft landscaping. Applicant Lewis District Council, care of Leighton Row, Ward, Ouse Valley and Ringmer. And just so we make sure everything is done correctly, I'm just going to go back to Mrs. Stone. I know the result, but I would like her to confirm.
Yes, that was carried, Chair. Thank you. Unanimously.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stone. Planning permission has been granted. Thank you. The next agenda item 12 is application LW/20/0494, location 40 Horsham Avenue, Peacehaven, BN10 8HX, proposal. Demolition of existing dwelling and replacement with 2-number semi-detached dwellings. Applicant M. Anderson, Ward, Peacehaven West. And recommendation grant planning permission subject to conditions. Mr.
I
Hill,
think we've missed an item. It's the item on page 47, which is Brickyard Farm, item 11.
How on earth could I go on to the next one?
You want your dinner.
Let's go to agenda item 11, please. Date. So, application number LW/20/0417, location Brickyard Farm, Town Littleworth Road, Barkham, East Sussex, BN8 4TD. Proposal. Variation of condition 1, landscaping, 4, number of pitches, 5, car parking, and 7, approved plans, as attached to planning permission LW/11/1500, incorporating subsequent amendments approved under LW/12/0917 and LW/13/0636 to allow for increase in number of pitches to 21, including an additional 3 camping pods, additional car parking and landscaping, ecological enhancements, Ward, Chaley, Barkham and Hamsey. Applicant Mr. T. Bullen. Mr. Hill, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a site that we visited fairly recently. Members may recall we had the application in for reconfiguration of the use of the units here and replacement of unit down here, and it tied in with providing most of the camping facilities in the large barn. This one in simplistic form, notwithstanding the very lengthy description of development here, some of the aspects such as landscaping have been shown to you previously on the last application, but I will run through them very quickly. But the key point here is that the applicant is seeking to increase the number of pitches on the site from 18 to 21. So that's 3 additional pitches. Now, we showed you this site plan last time, or something very similar to this, which we drew attention to in terms of the buildings, the new replacement building here, bringing all the, largely all of the camping associated space into this large barn with the dishwashing facilities here, bringing that closer to the camping facility itself. This part, you may remember, we've got 2 properties nearby, one down here and one up here. And there was issue in terms of landscaping and enhancing that. And this scheme just puts a little bit more flesh on the landscaping treatment. The tents here are existing tent pitches. These are already approved, so they're not for negotiation. But as part of the overall enhancement of the site to improve biodiversity and to lessen the wider impact, additional planting is proposed around the periphery, and certainly a lot more in this area as well. So that should help to soften the impact of both the commercial and the camping aspects in relation to the nearby residential properties, of which there are only 2. As I say, the key factors here are the additional pitches. So this is the main camping field, and the intention is to put 1 new camping pitch in here. So that will be a tent pitch. There will be another new camping pitch, which will be over here, but that will be a pod. So, and one of the new pitches will be here, and that will be one of the camping pods. And another new pitch, which is down here, will also be a camping pod. And I've got some examples of the types of pods that they're proposing, which I'll show you in a minute. And in addition to that, 3 of the pitches here, here, and here will be replaced from tents to camping pods. So very much this area of the campsite will become the camping pod field, with the main camping located in the field over here to the east of the disused railway line, with just a couple of pitches which have already been approved in the site to the north. The other aspect of this is that in addition to, or as well as increasing the number of pitches, they're also looking to increase the number of car parking spaces. So 3 additional spaces will be located down here. And again, these were shown on the plan that the committee considered last time. Just a reminder, this is an aerial photograph of the site. Old Brick House is the applicant's property. And you've got Woodside, and you've got White Lodge, which is used to accommodate bed and breakfast as well. There was another issue that we had and members raised in terms of access and passing, and I'll come on to that towards the end of this presentation. But this is the layout. So this is the main camping field with 1 of the additional pitches going in here. And this is what I term the pod field. So this is where the camping pods are to be located. And again, they're located a considerable distance away from the nearest residential properties and separated by both the landscape belt down here and the existing buildings, which you can see over here. These are typical pods. This is one of the proposed structures, and we've got a photograph of that, as I said, in situ on the site, but the pods will be in a variety of forms on the site, relatively modest in terms of their scale, but located in the field, and just give a quirkiness to those people who may wish to visit the site at more inclement times of the year if you're not hardy enough to sleep under canvas in the middle of winter. And again, just another example of the type of pods that they would be proposing on the site. I mentioned about car parking, and also car park and spaces, passing spaces for vehicles. And again, this was something that was mentioned on the last application, but the comments made from the committee have been taken forward and raised with the applicant. and the applicant has agreed and submitted this plan, which shows 2 parking spaces, one opposite Woodside here and one as you turn into the site. So these will be 2 spaces. This is their location in terms of the aerial photograph. So on the southern side and on the northern side as you sweep into the site. And again, their location is, this is the location of the one on the southern side, just this side of the entrance to Woodside, which is down here, very close to the main road. And again, as you sweep into the site, coming into the site, this area here will be the other passing place that will be provided. So the applicant has listened to the concerns raised by members last time, and whilst it wasn't something that committee felt justified refusing the scheme on, it was considered to make the scheme better and help to alleviate some of the concerns of the nearest neighbours. So those issues have been taken on board and implemented as part of the scheme. Not a lot to add to the report. As I say, the number of increased pitches raises from 18 to 21, so 3 increase. Highways have considered it and don't consider it to be objectionable and haven't raised an objection. There's wider biodiversity enhancements to the site as well, and the landscaping will further assist in improving biodiversity across the wider site, which is one of the reasons for people to come and stay at the secret campsite. So nothing further to add to the report, Chair. We are recommending approval as set out.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. I now call upon Mrs. Norman to read out the public speeches. Thank you, Mrs. Norman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Hill, Jennifer Norman, and Democratic Services. And we have received 2 written representations in respect of this application, both from supporters. One is from the agent and one is from the applicant. So I will start with the agent's submission. And this is to be read on behalf of Hannah McLaughlin of Bachelor Monk House in support of planning application LW/20/0417. The secret campsite is a low-density, wildlife-rich campsite that was set up by the applicant and his family in 2012. To date, there have been 2 planning applications to increase the number of pitches on the site by 3, including 1 tree tent in the woodland to the east. These applications were submitted in 2012 and 2013, respectively. Since then, the campsite has operated at its current capacity, spanning a period of over 7 years. The applicant now seeks to make better use of a southern area of the campsite adjacent to his family home, which currently contains 3 pitches, including 1 camping pod, and an area of underused amenity grassland. The applicant would like to allocate this area for camping structures designed by an award-winning on-site business known as Tree Tents, which will diversify the offer of accommodation and allow the campsite to utilize its year-round camping license. A total of 4 structures are proposed, 2 on existing pitches and 2 on new pitches. There's also an additional proposed camping pitch on the eastern side of the railway line in place of a compost toilet. The area of the site will be set aside for normal tent camping as it is currently. The proposed structures have unique but modest designs and will be well screened by existing vegetation. There's also additional planting proposed to the west of this area to enhance the screening and the habitats available for local wildlife. The structures can accommodate a smaller number of guests than a standard camping pitch, so there will be no net increase in the maximum number of people on site. The proposal aligns with planning policies that encourage a supportive and flexible approach for existing businesses within the district and provides specific support for well-designed guest accommodation. 7 letters of support have been received, including one from the local pub and farm shop, demonstrating the contribution of business to the local economy. The parish council are also supportive of the proposal, having come to visit the site. The secret campsite has been a huge draw for visitors since they opened their doors, and this demand has significantly risen since the coronavirus pandemic. The net increase of 3 new pitches will help to support the business as the country emerges from lockdown whilst maintaining the low-density nature of the site. It will continue to be carefully managed, quiet environment to ensure the amenity of neighbors and other campers is not affected. We therefore hope that you can support this application. And that concludes the first of 2 written representations, and I'll now move on to the second and final one. And this is a statement to be read on behalf of Tim Bullen, the applicant, in support of planning application LW/20/0417. Excuse me. The secret campsite has been trading since 2012. Prior to opening, the site has been used as a garden center and nursery that was open 7 days a week. It was charged business rates accordingly. Since 2012, the site has been run as a peaceful family campsite and has permission to be open all year. As a bit of background, we are regularly featured in national newspapers and considered one of the leading campsites in the UK by the Cool Camping Directory. The business employs a number of local people and generates trade for numerous local pubs, farm shops, village stores, and local tourist attractions. Staff are paid considerably in excess of local market rates, and this is very important to us. Through our small reception, we sell a range of local and sustainable sourced products, including meats, firewood, juices, alcohol, and ice lollies. We work closely with Sussex Wildlife Trust and jointly run an annual wildlife festival that has generated in excess of £18,000 for the trust since 2013. The purpose of this application is to make better use of our year-round campsite license by encouraging a small number of guests to stay with us in shelters, which are comfortable throughout the year. 2 of these shelters will be on existing pitches. 2 will be on new pitches. There's also 1 new tent pitch proposed to the east of the railway line. Most importantly, the low-density experience at the campsite will be maintained. These unique shelters have been designed on-site by Tree Tents, an innovative award-winning business based at Brickyard Farm. Tree Tents sell their products around the world. These shelters will be complemented by our heated shower, toilet, and cooking facilities, as well as new electric vehicle charging points powered by renewable energy. Much of this energy is generated on site, and we are also working closely with UK Power Networks and the Community Heat South, a local energy partnership based in Barkham, focusing on generating and using locally sourced energy. The new shelters will make better use of the on-site facilities and generate trade for a number of local businesses, including our own, during the quieter winter months. It will also provide employment for local people. The secret campsite is focused on nature and wildlife, and we have created a space in and around the site where it can thrive, providing campers with the opportunity to see, touch, smell, and hear it. This creates lasting memories for children and adults and encourages them to value it as an important asset worth defending. We hope you can support our application. Thank you, Chair. And that concludes the final representation received in respect of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Norman. Over to the committee for their comments, please. There are no comments from the committee, except Councillor O'Connor. Thank you. We can't hear you yet.
Anne Jones.
And Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Yeah, apologies for that. Yeah, we have had the opportunity to look at this application previously. Well, not this application, a different application, but this site previously. And I'm pleased to see the passing places have been incorporated into this. So thank you to planning officers for raising that with the applicants. I do recall there were some other outstanding issues regarding landscaping for the properties nearby, but that hasn't been brought forward in the previous application, but that hasn't been brought forward here, and I assume that will be dealt with by planning officers later in respect of the previous application. But generally speaking, I'm welcoming of this, subject to what I hear from colleague councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Jones, please.
Yes, I support what Councillor O'Connor has already said, particularly with the pulling signs on for vehicles coming in and out of a site, is most important. Can I ask a question? Do the pods, the fact that they are sort of fixtures, do they not attract sill? I see.
Yeah, they're temporary structures, and I neglected to show you a couple of photos, so I don't want to waste the opportunity to show you what attractive structures they are. This is one of the Okra camping pods in situ. So they're temporary structures. They can be moved and dismantled very quickly, and this is one of the grid shell camping pods. I showed you some pictures, but I thought some couple of photos of the structures in situ probably worth 1,000 words. But no, they're temporary structures, don't require sill.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Hill. I'm happy to recommend we accept this application as per the officer's recommendation, if that's in support of Lawrence, and I'll support him.
Councillor Manley, please. Thank you.
Councillor Manley, yes, I'd also happily support or second. I just really wanted to praise the biodiversity features here. Just the letters in support states about wildflower areas, and the ecologist stating that strimming will only take place under the supervision of an ecologist between March and October, and that there's going to be planting of new native hedging, and all of those things we need in general anyway, and ecology really needs to be taken into concern with planning. So I'm just really pleased to see that mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Manley. Just one point, if I could make, which is on 7.1, as far as protecting amenities at White Lodge, as far as screening, Mr. Hill, and I wondered if there was anything in there which applied to that, please.
I think that was covered really with the other application that we had last time, because we put a condition on to enhance that. So in fact, we would have ideally liked both applications to have come to you at the same time, but officers' workload, we couldn't achieve it. So that was covered because it was a point raised by members last time. So we covered that as a condition on the last application. So on this application, it's just showing you overall enhancements to the landscaping. They were both submitted around about the same time. So we will secure those enhancements through the other application, as Councillor O'Connor mentioned.
Yes. Just for the record, on 6.1, it says here that Barkham Parish Council objected. They didn't support, but that was just a point there. So let's go back to a proposer, which is Councillor O'Connor, and Councillor Jones to second, I believe. Mr. Hill.
Yes, just a quick point of clarification in terms of Barkham Parish Council. Councillors from Barkham Parish have visited the site. They're now positive towards the application, but expect restrictions to be maintained and monitored, i.e. all the conditions that we put on. So yes, the Barkham Parish Council do now support the application.
So what we read here, it's changed.
Apologies for that. Yes, it was a last minute one and I should have reported that. Apologies.
No problem. Thank you very much for that. So we have a proposal on the table from Councillor O'Connor. That is seconded by Councillor Jones, and that is to go with the recommendations of granting planning permission. So with no more ado, let's go for the vote. And as ever, it will be in alphabetical order. Councillor Graham Amy, for, against, abstain, please.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Duhigg, for, against, abstain, please.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Jones, for, against, abstain, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Silver Lord, for, against, abstain, please.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Imogen Makepeace, for, against, abstain, please.
For, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Millie Manley, for, against, abstain, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence O'Connor, for, against, abstain, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Nicola Papanakolo, for, against, abstain, please.
For, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Steve Saunders, please. For, against, abstain.
4, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Christoph von Kerthy, for, against, abstain, please.
4.
Thank you. So that is application number LW/20/0417, location Brickyard Farm, Town Littleworth Road, Barkham, East Sussex, BN8 4TD. Variation of condition 1 landscaping, 4 number of pitches, 5 car parking, and 7 approved plans. As attached to planning permission LW/11/1500. Incorporating subsequent amendments approved under LW/12/0917 and LW/13/0636 to allow for increase in numbers of pitches to 21, including an additional 3 camping pods, additional car parking and landscaping ecological enhancements. Ward, Chaley, Barkham and Hamsey, applicant Mr. T. Bullen. And over to Mrs. Stone to double check the vote.
Yes, that was carried unanimously, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Planning permission has been granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, Councillor Jones.
Yeah.
Would you excuse me from this last one? I've got 2 more Zoom meetings tonight, one starting on the hour. If you excuse me, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Jones, and that'll be recorded by officers. Thank you. Councillor Jones leaving the building as such.
Thank you.
Next agenda item 12. Application number LW/20/0494. Location 40 Horsham Avenue, Peacehaven, BN10 8HX. Proposal: demolition of existing dwelling and replacement with 2 number semi-detached dwellings. Applicant M. Anderson. Ward, Peacehaven West. Recommendation: grant planning permission subject to conditions. Mr. Hill, please.
Thank you, Chair. 40 Horsham Avenue, Peacehaven. This is the site located on the western side of Horsham Avenue, currently occupied by a fairly large bungalow, a number of bungalows on the same side of the street. Further down and just 1 property removed, there's another 2-storey dwelling, and there's a 2-storey dwelling opposite, which I'll show you. So there's a number of typical forms within the street itself. This is the plot. So the proposal is to demolish the existing bungalow and to erect a pair of semi-detached dwellings slightly further back than the rear building line of the existing building, and closer to the boundaries, but on each boundary maintaining a 1 metre separation distance. This is the ground floor layout, so it shows you the 1 metre boundary, car parking at the front. This is the outline of the bungalow itself, so you can see it's relatively modest, with a detached garage set further back into the site, with both structures being removed. The building set back so that it aligns with the building front building line, or set back, sorry, from number 42 building line, but lining up with number 38. Upper floor, 3 bedrooms. The only windows on the flanks serve bathrooms and an ensuite. These are the detailed elevations. Again, not a remarkable design, very, very typical of 2-storey dwellings in the vicinity, with a pyramidal roof hipped on all sides. These are the side elevations, just showing the small bathroom windows on the upper floor and the main access to the building from the front, with a side door access, and the rear elevation, front elevation. The top picture, sorry, it's a little bit small, but it gives you an idea of the proposed dwelling within the context of its adjacent properties. This is an existing chalet bungalow with its roof conversion, so this building will be slightly taller than that, and you can just make out the outline of the existing bungalow here. So it's slightly wider, it certainly projects further back into the site than the existing bungalow. Its neighbour is also a relatively modest bungalow, but on the other side of that, again, you have a 2-storey dwelling. So It's a building form that you do find in the street. Just some photographs. So this is the application site, clearly marked in red there, so you can't miss it. This is the chalet bungalow next door. So the proposal is to demolish this structure, and you can just make out the van parked here, and behind that is the garage. And the bottom two slides here show you this is the existing property. You can just make it out with its 2 off-street parking spaces for vans here. The rather modest neighbouring bungalow, and again the 2-storey dwelling of a very similar form to what is proposed on the plot itself. And again, this shot, which gives you a slightly wider angle, shows you the church here, or the rear, the hall of the church, and again another 2-storey dwelling slightly further down the street. So again, whilst looking up the street on that side, there are a number of bungalows. Certainly on the southern side, there are a number of 2-storey dwellings, and indeed on the opposite side of the road, a 2-storey dwelling. Again, very similar form to that which is being proposed here. Just some photos just at the back, just to show you potential impact. This is looking towards Edith Avenue, which gardens back onto the rear of this site. So it's a fairly good sized plot. This is the existing garage would be removed, and the building line will project back across here. And again, this is looking towards number 38, and the bungalow, which has a conservatory to the rear, which you can see in the bottom photos, and the boundary between the two is a fairly robust blockwork wall with some fencing above. And again, from the bottom of the rear garden, you can see the relationship to that property with its bungalow. And again, on the northern side, number 42, again, the proximity, and again, a high level window, which is obscure glazed. So whilst it will be made somewhat darker by the construction of the dwelling, which will project back beyond that building line, it is a non-habitable room, in as much of, as I say, it's got that obscure glazing in there as well. So not a lot else to add. I don't think there's any representations this evening. There have been a number, and as you can see from the report itself, there were a number of objections to the scheme in terms of the neighbours, and also Peacehaven Town Council considered that it was an unacceptable overdevelopment of the site, and their details are set out on page 68, paragraph 6.61. But your officers feel that it leads to a reasonable reuse and intensification of the plot, providing a good standard of accommodation with off-street parking and amenity space to the rear, and therefore are recommending approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. King. So I gather from you that there will not be a necessity for Mrs. Norman to read out any public speeches. Is that correct?
I don't think there were any on this one, no.
That's correct, Chair. Jennifer Norman, no speeches.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Norman. So we'll go straight over to the committee for their comments, please. And currently I don't see any councillors' hand up at all.
Councillor Doohig did have a, yes, she's got a hand up, Chair.
Ah, there you are, Councillor Doohig. Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Doohig.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to say that I note Peacehaven Town Council's objection. I'd just like to clarify on 6.6 on page 68, and to ask the question again on bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that Mr. Hill did in fact, did he visit the site? Just for clarification and to note that it did happen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Doohig. Mr. Hill.
Yes, I can confirm that whilst I didn't visit the site, the case officer did, and the photos you've got are taken by the case officer when they made their visit and assessed the proposal that you're considering tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Just so that is noted. Unless there are any other colleagues wish to speak, I'd like to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll come back to that proposal. Councillor O'Connor, please, and then Councillor Manley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I note that the big problem here is that it's a bigger building than what is there presently, and it is larger than the bungalows to the north, and therefore it could be seen as changing the character of the area, and it would overlook to some extent the properties that back onto it. So there is an element of concern of overdevelopment, as Peacehaven Town Council have said. But however, I do note that immediately opposite is a two-storey property, and further to the south of the road, of course, you've got the church and this sort of thing. So it sort of blends in, and it is sort of the character of the area of what is termed the area of East Peacehaven, but I bow to Councillor Duhig's superior knowledge of the area, being a ward councillor. But I would suggest that this is an appropriate use of this land, and I'd be happy to second Councillor Duhig's proposal, subject to what other councillors have to say. And I notice Councillor Manley wants to speak. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, sorry, I'm not sure if you invited me to speak. I didn't hear you. Okay, I think that's a yes.
My fault. I was muted.
That's okay, Councillor Manley. I'll be really quick. Page 70.8.4.2 and 8.5, it just says that electric car charge points can be secured by condition, and for sustainability, that the application was not accompanied by sustainability or energy statement, but this can be secured by condition to comply with policy CP14. I just wondered if that's something that we should do as a committee, and I didn't know. I just wanted to know what other councillors thought or officers.
Mr. Hill.
Yeah, they're already there. Condition, if you look at the conditions, condition 3 requires renewable energy, passive energy efficiency measures, and condition 5 mentions electric car charging points have been laid out and provided. Yes.
Councillor Manley, are you content? It's in the condition there. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that.
Saunders, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking at page 69, the appraisal 8.1 and the various paragraphs there that we've got. I know that this policy CP2 supports higher residential densities. This one is only 54 per hectare. We can go up to 57. And then the next paragraph, the larger paragraph, talks about CP2 favours smaller 1 and 2 bedroom properties. And then it refers to the fact that the existing character and housing mix in the vicinity is varied. I think we should take account of the fact that the 2-bedroom houses in, the 2-storey houses in that road are generally larger houses than these are going to be. I think there is an argument, and I don't know whether this is one that's been recommended for approval on balance, Mr. Hill, but it does smack of overdevelopment of this site. The larger properties, which therefore normally they would subdivide, and you'd have 2 bungalows, as we know in Peacehaven. There's lots of these developments in Peacehaven where they effectively knock down one house and put generally 2-bedroom bungalows in there. This is knocking down a property and putting 2 semi-detached houses in, which is sort of out of character for Peacehaven. So I've got concerns that this is rather overdevelopment at this site, and I think the fact that 8.1.3 says that CP2 favours smaller 1 and 2 bedroom properties, I think brings that to a head here. So I'm happy to go to the vote, but I've just got these concerns in my head that this does smack rather of overdevelopment of this site, and I see where we've got the neighbourhood representations and Peacehaven Town Council all saying that it's unacceptable density and overdevelopment. I'm minded to agree with those concerns. Whether on balance that means I'm going to vote against any proposals for acceptance or not, I don't know if anybody else has got anything to say, or Mr. Hill can come back any further on that. I don't know, but that's the thing that's concerning me is that or the paragraphs in 8.1. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, very briefly in terms of that. I mean, as Councillor O'Connor mentioned, you know, and I mentioned in the presentation, there are a range of dwelling types in there. You have got the smaller bungalows. You've also got some larger two-storey dwellings. Density itself, in terms of your officers and how we assess these things, density is just a measurement, but if you meet all the other requirements, if you can provide the off-street parking, if all the room sizes comply with the national room size standards, if the gardens are of a reasonable size, 10 metres plus, and provide adequate amenity space for the dwelling and the number of occupiers that are likely to be in there, if you don't result in any detrimental amenity, to throw something out because it provides a 4-bed unit instead of a 2-bed unit, you probably wouldn't stand much of a chance on appeal. I think so. It is a balance, and I think all of these things have to be weighed together. In terms of overdevelopment, generally, if you don't meet some of those standards, then your officers are going to be saying you're cramming too much on the site. But if you can provide the parking, the amenity space, the room sizes that meet the national room sizes, if it isn't exactly out of keeping, if it was the only 2-storey dwelling in there, you probably wouldn't throw it out in terms of density. You'd probably throw it out because it was out of keeping with the rest of the street scene. When this street scene has got a mix of 2-storey dwellings and a number of those, at least 3 or 4 in very close vicinity to the site, as well as bungalows, I think you'd be hard pushed to justify a refusal based on impact on the character of the area. It ticks all the other boxes in terms of the standards of development within it, and therefore in terms of density, it falls within that broad upper level criteria for more urban areas. So I think in terms of overdevelopment, I think it would be a hard refusal if you were to go down that avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. That was very informative.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hill. That it bears out what we're saying. It is on balance, and I appreciate that. That's what our committee is going to be doing, it on balance. Right, it's quite clear. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor Papanikolaou.
Thank you, Chair. Just to help Councillor Saunders out a little bit, in my ward, West Ward, there are a lot of properties that are 2-storey properties, 2 bedrooms, and with the larger 2-storey dwellings in the road, I think they don't look that out of character. I mean, there's many avenues along the coast road where you can go up and down and see the 2-storey buildings now. And I mean, they are looking a lot better than the tatty bungalows. So I don't know if that helps you, but I can think in my ward, at least 8 of the avenues where they have put the 2-storey dwellings instead of bungalows, and they do look nice and neat. They don't look, sort of over empowering or anything. So I don't know if that helps.
No, thank you, Councillor Papanikolaou. I used to live in both Peacehaven and Telscombe, so I'm quite au fait with the area. But no, I agree with you. It's it is a mixture of dwellings in Peacehaven completely. It's just this particular site. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everyone. So I have a proposal on the table from Councillor Duhigg, and that is seconded by Councillor O'Connor. And that is to go with the officer's recommendation of granting planning permission. So we'll go straight to the vote. And first of all, Councillor Graham Amy, for, against, or abstain?
Councillor Graham Amy, for.
Councillor Duhigg, for, against, abstain?
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jones has left. Councillor Silverlord, for, against, abstain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Imogen Makepeace, for, against, abstain.
For. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Millie Manley, for, against, abstain, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence O'Connor, for, against, abstain, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Nicola Papanakalo, for, against, abstain, please.
For. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Steve Saunders, for, against, abstain, please.
I am for, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Christoph von Kirche, for, against, abstain, please.
For.
Thank you. So we're going back to Mrs. Stone for the vote result, please.
Yes, Chair, thank you. That vote was carried unanimously.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. So that is application number LW/20/0494, location 40 Horsham Avenue, Peacehaven, BN10 8HX. Proposal: demolition of existing dwelling and replacement with 2 number semi-detached dwellings. Applicant M. Anderson, Ward, Peacehaven West, and planning permission has been granted. Thank you. The committee now turns to page 73, which is a planning enforcement policy, and we are going to be required to endorse it, but I'm just going to hand you briefly over to Mr. Lee Palmer, please. I hope you've had the chance to read this, committee, and I'm sure you're going to keep it.
Can I just quickly ask, can I leave because my school is just shutting?
Of course.
And otherwise I have to set the alarm and I don't know the code. Okay.
This is Councillor von Kirche. Let me just make it plain for the record that the planning applications actually have been completed, and this actually is a policy we're about to discuss. So good night,
Yeah.
Councillor von Kirche. Cheers.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Mr. Palmer, please.
Thank you, Chair. For members' information, this is a policy document that tries to articulate the how we apply our judgment in enforcement-related cases. It goes on to outline that we have stipulated a priority of those cases. Some will have greater urgency than others, and this document articulates where those priorities do lay. It does recognise that any enforcement action should be proportionate and definitely discretionary. It also highlights the fact that all parties involved in the enforcement function should be kept regularly updated. So complainant and perpetrator should be kept fully updated with where things are progressing. And it concludes by giving a range of policies across key themes. So, Chairman, we are commending or inviting this planning committee to endorse the report and recommend to Cabinet its forward motion onto Cabinet for formal adoption. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Palmer. And I do see a hand up from Councillor Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. I've only got one query on this, and it's on the appendix, and it's level 1. And I wonder if about 4 or 5 spots down, we've got unauthorised work affecting protected sites, such as sites of special scientific interest, national and local nature reserve, sites of archaeological interest. I wonder if we could introduce into there protected species. Because you might be developing a site unofficially, let's say, and you know, an assessment's been done, and there are protected species on there. I realise it can't be a cover-all, but I just wondered if that could be added, or if there would be a comment on that.
Over to Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there is the opportunity to include supplemental additions to that list of parameters. Councillor Amy is quite right that the list can't be full. It has to be a suggested course of action, but we can certainly put a pointer into protected species. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I didn't mute before I started then. I welcome the statement and I'm happy to support it. And it's an opportunity. We had a council meeting at town yesterday, as Councillor Amy will remember. And just a note, really, just to thank the new officer who was praised highly for his work in New Haven, and if you could take that back, and I know that's not really relevant, but it's an opportunity to thank the planning department and thank the new officer who seems to be bedding down well and is getting good reports from councillors in New Haven. So thank you, Chair, for that opportunity. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders, and over to Mrs. Stone, please.
You're muted, Joanna. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And just a note of caution in relation to the protected species point that Councillor Amy raised. I think he's referring to the text of the existing planning enforcement policy, which is already embedded in the local plan part 2. So we can't amend that policy as such, but we can make reference to in the planning enforcement policy to protected species, but also we have to be aware that it's obviously protected by other legislation as well.
Okay.
So we would make the appropriate referral, if necessary, to the police, rather than take action ourselves as a council.
Okay, yep, that's fine. I go along with that. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. So I'm about to ask colleagues to vote on endorsing this planning enforcement policy. Am I mentioning this point as far as protected species? What is your advice, please?
Chair, I mean, I think it's a difficult one. Were you referring specifically to the text EN3, Councillor Amy? Where is it? EN1, Councillor Amy?
No, I was just looking at the levels, and it just dawned on me that you know, unless it's a specific registered site, it seems to leave out the kind of protected species, you know, list. And obviously, you know, with the interest in biodiversity today and the fact that we ask for ecological assessments on certain land, it just seemed to me to make a little bit of sense to put in the protected species in there, just to reinforce, if you like.
That's absolutely possible, but you're not changing. But providing that doesn't change the text of the existing policy, but this new one can make reference to it. That's perfect.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
So could we just go back to what I'm asking the committee to vote on, Mrs. Stone? I'm asking them to endorse officer recommendations 1 and 2 and reasons for recommendations. What am I adding anything, please?
I think we could just say together with making a minor amendment to include reference to protected species.
Okay, so together with making a minor
amendment,
yes,
to include specific reference to protected species. Yes.
To include reference to
protected species.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's pretty clear, Councillor Amy. Yeah.
Yes, that's great, Chair.
Okay. So let's go to the vote. And I just want to make it clear, colleagues, this is what we're being asked to endorse. So the purpose of the report is to present details of the proposed planning enforcement policy, officer recommendations, that the report be noted and that Cabinet be recommended to approve the planning enforcement policy as set out in Appendix 1. Reasons for recommendations: to publicise the Council's expectations for the delivery of the planning enforcement function. And then Mrs. Stone has suggested together with making a minor amendment to include reference to protected species. All right, happy with that, everyone? And clear. Thank you so much. So I will now call upon each councillor to vote for endorsing and supporting officer recommendation. You happy with that, Mrs. Stone?
Yeah, or you may just, if everyone's in general agreement, they may just wish to nod or voice their objection if they don't agree.
May I?
Of course. This time you can do anything.
Okay, committee. So unless I hear otherwise, do you endorse this report? Everyone is endorsing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please. So it's just for me to say that the next meeting of this committee is scheduled to be held as a remote meeting at 4 o'clock on 31st March 2021. The agenda is completed. Thank you all for attending, and I close the meeting at 19:11. Thank you very much.